What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to T3G. This is the Tangents podcast, and this is a little bit different of an intro than you are normally used to, because this one started in the middle of a sentence. Basically, I was lucky enough to get a fantastic guest on, Jiba Molei Anderson, and I'm probably screwing that up, but I think that's how you pronounce his middle name. I didn't check with him. I could have. I had him on for 3 hours, and that's what's going to be coming up here. Like I said, we were going to talk about one subject in particular. We do get to it eventually, but we started talking about other stuff, and honestly, I was just kind of like, hey, this is a great conversation, and I'm just going to start recording. So here we go. Like I said, it's in the middle of the sentence, but I think you can catch up pretty quick as to what we're talking about. Enjoy.
And honestly, this pandemic has also gone to show how stupid systemic racism is.
Oh my God, yeah.
Just how dumb it is. Because in all honesty, if we really want to break it down, the reason why the United States is in the place that it's in right now with this pandemic is because of systemic racism. And it's simply, I'm going to break it down to you.
Please do. Yeah, I'm very intrigued.
This is how systemic racism and white supremacy messed up the United States. And it breaks down simply to this. Our previous president, who was a black man, had a plan written out for just such an emergency.
Right, because of the Ebola scare.
The current president, who's a petty, bitter-ass white man, threw that out the window because the black man wrote it.
Yep. There it is.
1 + 1 = 2.
There it is. You're right.
Simple and plain.
That's 100%. That's 100%. Right. That never made sense to me. I remember when he fired them, and everyone was like, "What are you doing?" Like we've dealt with these scares for like several years now. Like, why would you fire this group of people? But he was like, "Oh, blah blah blah. We don't need them. No big deal." And now it's a big fucking deal.
Because he's petty.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because I remember when we had the West Nile. That was a pretty big scare. I mean, that was a pretty big deal for a long time. Then the Zika virus. Then we had the Ebola scare, which is why that whole team was put together. And it got shut. They took care of that shit. Because I remember people were afraid of Ebola. That was a terrifying idea.
Right. And what's fascinating is that as scared as people were about West Nile, about Zika, about Ebola, you know what I mean? About swine flu.
Yeah.
About the bird flu.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These things. There was that thing in place, which is completely gone right now.
Yep.
Right? Like, what is it? Definitely Trump has killed more people than the Vietnam War has.
Oh shit. That's a big fact. Wow.
Stateside.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's
like Trump has done more damage to this country that more than Al Qaeda or the Taliban could ever do. Trump has the reason why the United States has been economically on top for as long as it has been is because the United States has had the benefit of not having any one of those major conflicts come on this country's soil. That's just straight up facts.
Right.
Like World War I, and nobody came on here.
Yeah, no one's coming to mess with us.
World War II, the biggest and only attack on U.S. soil was Pearl Harbor.
Right.
That's it. You know what I mean? Then the United States was not touched again by the global stage until 9/11. Right? And even, you take all of those into account, all those conflicts from foreign entities into account. On U.S. soil, the casualties had been negligible.
Right.
Compared to what happened to the rest of the world. Right now, we are dealing with, our own worst enemy is ourselves. And our own worst enemy right now in this country is the president.
Yeah.
Like, Iran doesn't have to do anything. Iraq didn't have to do shit. Afghanistan, you know, Russia, all they're doing is like, if in all honesty, all they're doing is poking the bear.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, people want to talk about you know, people with their conspiracy theories and so on and so forth. I think conspiracy theories are the fanfic of the those who surrendered. You know, don't get me wrong. There are conspiracies about. I mean, there are open conspiracies.
Of course.
About. We know. As a matter of fact, we know about the conspiracies.
Right. I mean, hell, the Pentagon just admitted to having, or how do they phrase it? Interplanetary vehicles not built on this Earth. They just came out and said that shit. And it's like, all right, cool. That's interesting. Can we get a little more detail on that? Like, what the hell?
Right. But you know, with people talk about Soros and 5G and
oh my god,
that
shit was hilarious.
Like...
I remember when that shit first popped off, and there were like videos of people in the UK like tearing down 5G towers. I was like, first of all, you motherfuckers don't even understand how expensive that shit is to put up. like, and all you're doing is setting back somebody from being like successful. Like, god damn it. 5G.
And then on top of that, it's like tearing down the tower. Do you realize the person that built that tower has enough money to build another one? Number one. Yeah. Number two, you know, that conspiracy does not fly because of the fact that they make money off of people using that service. So why would they put something out that would hurt people and kill people? And three, viruses just don't work that way. I mean, like a computer virus can affect machinery, stuff like that. But we're not quite there where you can transmit a computer virus to a human body, right? You know, like a biological weapon. I mean, and my business is fiction. Right. you right. We've come up with some shit, and that's a little far-fetched. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like... that right there. That's a great point. That's an incredible point. People who write fiction are the ones that are like, I don't believe that. I couldn't even come up with that. I mean, because that's the thing. Like, the fiction writers are also, in a lot of ways, we're futurists. Yeah. Right? In a lot of ways, we see the writing on the wall. And if we're really good about it, we extrapolate what's happening in the world currently. And we just bring that to the fore, right? We just push it forward. We push it towards its, logical conclusion. And that's where we live. You know what I mean? Like, that's where some of us live, in that space. Right? So it's like, for example, when 9/11 happened, when I saw that tragedy, one of the things that I thought, first of all, I was like, wow, that was a brilliant supervillain move right there. And what's interesting about that brilliant supervillain move is that it was low tech, and low budget. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Low tech, low budget, and impossible to actually trace. Like, you can't get the person that did it, right? You only have the command structure to consider. Right. And that's I am not a big. I really am not a big conspiracy theorist. 9/11 is the only time in reality, and the only time where I've looked at some shit and I'm like, that is a lot of fucking coincidences. That is just a lot. Like, I always say, like, if I believe the entire story as it was presented, because there's a lot of inconsistencies with how shit was, reported, and there's just a lot of, Building 7, right? And like that. I don't know if that was supposed to fall, the brand new insurance contract. Like,
you know, when a wife dies with a brand new insurance policy, they look at the husband. You know, they don't look at the,
You're like,
like it's a lot of like
was that insurance taken out
yeah,
48 hours earlier?
yeah,
That's
that's all. You know, there was just like a lot of conspiracies. There's
you, Playboy, with your plan too. I mean, that's kind of like a little, you know, you kind of jumping the gun there, homeboy. I mean, at least wait like
right. I'm saying,
2-3 months.
yeah, it's got yeah. That's always the funniest part in the movies is like, because they always do that shit like on like SVU, you know, like oh you know, like you just took out a recent policy on her, and he's like, I don't even know what you're talking about, like.
You know, and see again, talk about fiction. They are basing those cases off of facts because I'll watch realities like Fatal Attraction on TV One. Human beings are just that goofy. You know what I mean?
My God,
like they're just, which leads me into the whole thing about conspiracy theories and about how I feel like they're the fanfic of the defeated. Because if you look at the people that they say are so brilliant, you know, with these theories, they're idiots. They're fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Like real talk. The majority of the rich, especially the inherited rich, are fucking useless idiots.
It's very true.
They're not brilliant. They're not brilliant madmen. They are like lethargic human beings who are still trying to prove that they're worthy human beings because they've had everything handed to them.
Yeah.
And because they don't know the struggle or the satisfaction of achievement from struggle. You see what I'm saying?
100%.
And yeah, and so it's like, you know, people are like, oh, is this commission, is that commission, blah, blah, blah. Like, this ain't Hobbs and Shaw. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. And that's the thing. They always want to have this like massive, because I remember, that was 18 when 9/11 happened. And there was just, no, I was 17. And I just was, you know, we were online. Everybody was online and we're just looking for any answers you could find, right? Anything. And I remember there was kind of like a pandemic of its time. There was a video where they were talking about like, oh, like, you know, there's this ruling council and there's like supposed video of these meetings happening. And then, you know, now in retrospect, I remember, I just think about, oh, they were saying like that George Bush was part of this. And I'm like, George Bush really was a simple man. And like, I remember watching the trailer for Vice. I haven't seen Vice, but was it Vice? Is that what it's called? The one with, that was about Dick Cheney.
Oh yeah.
I remember watching the trailer for that, and I remember the conversation where he asks him to be vice president, and he's just eating chicken wings, and he's got the goofiest smile on his face. I was like, that's probably the realest thing that I've ever seen about George Bush, because like that's perfect. I believe that 100%. I believe that he was just chewing on some chicken wings. You want to be my vice president, and then
yeah, because he was, you know, W was. As my god sister put it, he was a regular dude.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like he didn't necessarily want to be president. He was a regular dude thrust into that situation. His cabinet were some major supervillains. Like Dick Cheney was Emperor Palpatine like a mug.
Dude, that whole situation, like because they put it in the trailer. So like having that, because he has that whole spiel where he says, you know, this has been a ceremonial role in the past. Like, give me the energy department, give me this department, give me that department, and I'll do it. And I was like, oh my God, he did do that shit. Like, that's what happened. He just took power from some shit, and I was like, because he was always scary to me. Because how scary do you have to be to shoot someone in the face and get an apology?
That's a proper supervillain.
Like
that is that is definitely on some Doctor Doom shit.
Yeah.
You know, and definitely the W presidency was the oil baron presidency. The only difference, if we could say, between that presidency and the Trump presidency is that the Bush presidency still was, in a weird way, still in service to the United States of America.
Yeah.
You know, they, despite everything that you could say about the Bush presidency, and you can say a lot.
Right.
You can say a whole lot.
Right.
A whole lot. A whole lot.
Right. They had their failure. I mean, they had their major failures. They had Katrina.
Or you cannot say that they didn't. You cannot say that they sold the country out.
Right.
You cannot say like they willingly would sell the United States out. Unlike this group of motherfuckers we have in office right now and in power right now. Right? These motherfuckers they don't even care about the mythology of the country, which most people still, you know, live on, is the mythology of the American dream. And it is obvious, like, these people, they do not even respect the mythology of it. Like, they don't give a fuck, you know? And their followers don't give a fuck. I'm sorry. It's like, you know, people try to both sides it or minimize certain things. No, there are certain hard lines, right? And it's like, if you support a presidency or a group of people who are outwardly and extremely racist, outwardly and extremely sexist, outwardly and extremely homophobic, transphobic, outwardly disgusted by people of lower economic standing and doing everything in their power to keep them in that place, then I'm sorry, you're a piece of trash.
Right.
Right? I'm sorry. Like, the argument begins and ends there. Because, you know, my thought process is very simple. It is the idea of selflessness versus selfishness.
Right.
And it's like, there's no way on God's green earth that you can convince me that your selfish attitudes are the proper attitudes in order for society to exist and thrive and move forward.
It's funny, they they try to tout these big things that he's done. I mean, big. But he has done some things that other people have not done. Okay? He has done some positive things that other people have not done. And the problem with it is that they put these things up and like, but look, he did this thing. Like, but that's like me going around your house, kicking over your furniture, but then I just clean up your dishes real quick. But I kicked over all your furniture.
Right. Like came in being mad Rick James, you know, fucking up the couch.
Fuck your couch.
Slapping people.
Yeah. But then I was like, oh man, you know what? Let me wash this bowl real quick.
But he made this jug of Kool-Aid though.
Right.
That was good.
That exactly, because he did do the thing with the diabetes, like he insulin. I should say diabetes. He lowered the price of diabetes like through executive action, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But at the same time, is that not also serving to his constituency? Because like,
exactly,
it's a bunch of white fat people with diabetes. Like, I don't know a lot of non-white people.
Well, it's also this, right? You know, you got to look at intention.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look at the track record, right? Yeah, he did a couple of good things, but it's not like he did it at the beginning of his presidency.
Yeah, it's
not like you know, he made that a platform,
right,
and whatnot. He did these things. After you fucked up the national response to this pandemic, after you fucked up the national response to the continued government-sanctioned murder of brown and black folk, you know? And then when people want to talk about, well, what about, you know, the white people who were killed by that? My answer to that is that why are you not protesting for them?
Right.
You're not being their voice.
That's the realest part of that. That's the realest part of that, because people have that argument all the time of, well, what about, you know, most people killed by the police are white? Like, that's not a good thing. Like, that's not somehow a better argument. Cops aren't supposed to kill people. Like,
like supremacy makes you stupid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like the way that the mind is warped and framed is that you get triggered when you hear Black Lives Matter, and then you want to say all lives matter, but you don't even advocate for the lives of your own when they are being snuffed out by an just legal and law enforcement system.
A friend of mine, a friend of mine came over. And he said he had. I remember when Black Lives Matter first started. What was it? 2016. That was 2015, 2016. Yeah. So when that first started, and there were protests in the streets, and people were in the highways and stuff. I remember my cousin coming to me, and he's like having all these arguments with me, and he's like, what if they're preventing ambulance? What if they're doing this? What if they're doing that? And I'm like, that's the point. Like, people are getting killed. No one's listening. You got to inconvenience people. That's the only way. And he was like, well, if I'm taking my wife to the hospital, like, I'm going to do what I have to do. And I was like, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, like, you haven't done anything. We haven't done anything. No one's done anything. So, like, maybe we got to lose a few to fucking figure shit out.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is kind of where growth comes in. This year, George Floyd dies. He calls me. He's like, yo, can we just talk? He's like, I can't fucking sleep over this. And that it very much new information, growth, and just understanding. But then you have the people that are looking at it and they like, oh, Black Lives Matter, and like that you're saying that all lives don't matter. That's never been, like, no one's out there. Like, it's very, and I try to equate this to other shit to people, and they still don't listen. But it's like, if when they go out in what is it, September, October for breast cancer, and there's women marching all over the place for breast cancer, are they saying fuck testicular cancer? No. It's just that right then and there, they're raising awareness and money for breast cancer. Like, right now, this is what we need to deal with. It's mind blowing that's like a hard thing for people to get. It's mind blowing. But I think it falls down on understanding. I've seen a bunch of different stuff recently, a lot of content recently about all these things that we are not taught about. We are not taught about Tulsa. We're not taught about Black Wall Street. We're not taught about Seneca Village. Like, none of that stuff is known. I didn't know about Seneca Village until recently. That blew my fucking mind.
By the way, that's by design. You
of
know
course,
what I mean?
Of course.
One thing that this country is really good about is trying to whitewash its history.
Oh my God!
It's really good about trying to sweep under the rug the injustices that were incurred to get us to the situation where we are now.
Yep.
You know,
they suppose. I don't know if this went through, but there was a movement where they were going to try to change the textbooks that talked about the Trail of Tears to say that the Native Americans moved. They like willingly just made way for America. I'm like, that's not at all what happened.
Right.
How much I've learned, and I said this before on the podcast, how much I've learned since I left school about American history is infinite times more than what I learned during school. You learn these little things. I'm like, this whole recent thing where I found out George Washington Carver was a goddamn revolutionary, not just like, oh, he made peanut butter. Of the many things that he did, including helping revitalize the soil, like the fact that he that should be the thing to pitch. Like, oh, peanut butter, fuck peanut butter. He made soil viable again. Like, can we talk about that?
Right.
That's some science shit. Like,
right.
Like, god damn, like peanut butter. Like, fuck peanut butter. Like,
gotcha. I mean, but that's, you know, again, like I said, that's by design.
Yeah.
That's American education by design. Like, granted, you know, I mean, I was lucky, all thanks to my mom for putting me and my bro through private school, where, I had some great teachers about history. But still, they didn't tell the whole story. You know what I mean? It was definitely like getting into college and beginning explorations for myself and things of that nature to learn more about what's really going on. And that's still an ongoing process, right? Like the education and the unearthing of history is a lifelong pursuit because of the fact that, if you do it right, you're supposed to learn from history, right? Because if you don't, you just have these cycles of bullshit going on right now. For example, what we are dealing with right now with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and everything like that is the same thing our parents dealt with in the civil rights movement.
Right.
It's the same thing that, great grandparents dealt with and, during Reconstruction. You see what I'm saying? And it's like every time, people want to sweep that under the rug and, talk about, how things have changed and whatnot. And I've been thinking about this lately, because, I was born in the 70s, right? And as a kid, it was like the kind of thing, they wanted to say that racism was over and that was a whole new world. And as a little kid, you don't understand the passage of time, right? And it was like a couple of years ago, I had actually written a piece in my blog and I kind of really broke it down. I was like, what was I thinking? I was like, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated 4 years before I was born, right? The Voting Rights Act was, signed, 72, what was that, 65? So, maybe 7 years before I was born, right? Women's rights, Roe v. Wade happened when I was 3. You see what I mean? Like, and it was leading up to, the legalization of gay marriage, which happened just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And you have all these people, talk about, we've done enough. It's like, you barely scratched the surface, man. You know what I'm saying? Yep. It's like you gonna talk about 68 like being enough, and that's it. Like you scratched the barest of surfaces.
Yep.
Like even now, what we're going through is them. Now they're getting a little bit deeper. you know what I mean? Into the situation, but still, it's like, nah, we got work to do.
There's a whole lot of work to be done. A whole lot of work to be done.
And the people who are impeding that progress, I've always said that there are 2 modes of change in this universe. It's either evolution or revolution.
Yep.
Evolution is the natural course of change. And you always have people who try to stop that natural course of change.
Yep.
Change gonna come anyway. You can only stop it for so long. So either it's going to be passive like evolution, or it's going to be active and dynamic like revolution, because you've been trying to hold that at bay.
Yep.
And right now, we are in another period of revolution. And what needs to happen, or what I hope happens, first of all, I am heartened by the progress, and I'm heartened by how it's growing. And you have to thank the pandemic for that. You have to thank nature for that.
Yeah.
Because
people have time.
Yeah, nature collectively told the world to sit its ass down.
Yep.
Right? And because the thing is, nature was telling us for years, like, yo, you know what I mean? Like, nature was waiting for us. I mean, especially in this country and whatnot, we had all these opportunities to like address not only our problems, but the dude in office right now. We had all these opportunities. We had the scandals, you know what I mean? We had comedy, right? We had Mueller, right? We had straight up impeachment. And humanity dropped the ball on checking this motherfucker each and every single time. So now, like, I firmly believe the universe, Mother Nature was like, okay, y'all kept fucking up, and that's it. I'm putting my foot down.
100%. I mean, I think without that, I mean, with the fact that everyone's been locked in, everyone, like, globally, everyone is at home. This turned Black Lives Matter into a global movement.
Yes.
You had protests in Italy. You had protests in Luxembourg. You had protests everywhere. Japan. Everywhere. All over the world. Japan, where there's like 17 black people.
But they're like, yo,
like,
yo, our 17 black people matter. Yo.
And that was heartwarming, genuinely. Like, to see that, and to see that people everywhere understand this, it hopefully there were some people that were on the wrong side of that and were like, everybody thinks this? It's like, fucking everybody? Like, am I been just wrong this whole time? Like,
like Japan?
yeah. Like, that's my hope, is that there are people that saw the global movement and were just like, holy shit, I've just been wrong this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no opinion in this. This is the kind of thing that there is no opinion in. There is no discussion about. There is no gray. Like, life has a whole lot of grays. There's a whole lot of gray and a lot of shit. But there are certain shit that is right and wrong and good and evil. And there is no middle ground on this. Like,
right.
You are either right or you are wrong. That's it. Like, there's like, anybody that saw the horrible, like, those 9 minutes, I wanted to jump through the screen and tackle that motherfucker. I wanted, like, I couldn't believe he had 9 minutes of choice to not kill a man, and he still did it. Yeah. He had the choice for 9 minutes to not kill someone, and he still did that, and that pissed me off in ways that are very, very. I've tried to articulate through this podcast on several occasions, but it's very difficult because all I want to do is jump through the fucking screen and tackle the motherfucker. I would have tossed that little Asian dude out my way, and I would have tackled him. I'd take me down. I don't give a shit.
Right.
Like, right. I was so mad, and like, the fact that that man is fucking insane. Because the only movement he made that whole time was when the firefighter lady stepped forward to try to be like, hey, render some aid, and he reached for his fucking pepper spray. Mm-hmm. To cause more harm to someone. Right. Like, that's and then you have these little white ignorant motherfucking kids turning it into a challenge on social media, and that pissed me off. And that's where like education, that's where understanding, that it's all failing right there. Because, like, how do you turn the murder of someone into a challenge? Like, fuck yourself.
Well, that's the pathology, you know. That's the pathology that's taught in this country. Like, you know, it's definitely a learned behavior disorder. It's a sociopathic. It's a sociopathic disorder, and it is something that is taught, and it is something that is reinforced through, you know, the media, again, through the structure of government organizations. You know what I mean? Like, this pathology is baked into, unfortunately, this country. And to divest yourself from that pathology, especially when on the surface, even if it does or does not benefit you, the whole idea is because your tone is, you know, of a certain hue, because you look like those in power, you in fact have some sort of power, which is completely not the case. It's a complete and utter fallacy.
Right.
As we see time and time again with these regular motherfuckers trying to act spicy, then they lose their jobs and shit like that, and they wonder what the fuck just happened. That pathology is a motherfucker.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, it's got you out here thinking that you better than so-and-so just because, you know, you are melanin deficient. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That doesn't make you better than anybody. As you see time and time and time again. And that's the ill part. The ill part about that pathology, and this is also, you know, another fallacy of supremacy, is that if you think about that pathology, it's all about making the person mediocre. Yep. Right? Like let's break it down, right? So the nature of the pathology is this, okay? Part of the pathology is this. Asian people are better at math than everybody else. You know what I mean?
Right.
Another part of the pathology is like, you know, Negroes have super strength and are hypersexualized, and even if you break it down to, like, you know, black men having bigger dicks, so on and so forth.
Right.
Right? The nature of the pathology is like you just an average mediocre motherfucker. And the reason why you need to be scared of these motherfuckers is because, number one, this dark dude's got a bigger dick than you, or on the other hand, you know, this Asian dude can like run rings around you in quadratic equations and stuff like that, right?
I just had a genuine PTSD flashback when you said quadratic equations.
Right. But you know, but the fucked up thing about this pathology is like, oh, you supposed to be superior because you're mediocre?
Right.
Like and imagine how that works with a person's mind every single day.
Yeah. It'd be fucked up if you go back and like, you know, if we were able to one day take a viewport back into history, and like the first time that a white man subjugated a black man is because he saw he had a bigger dick, and he's like, no, this ain't gonna fly.
But you but you know what though? But you know what? The people who created this mindset, that's probably exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
They saw them being able to run faster. He's like, I can't run that far. Nah, we're gonna put him in chains. He can't run that far.
Like just all the little things. Like I'm trying to figure out where it came from, right? I'm trying to figure out if European countries have a long-standing beef with African countries. Like, I'm looking back at the history, you know, like I'm looking at the Dark Ages. And what's interesting about the Dark Ages is that you could argue that at certain points, the African continent kind of soft conquered Europe a little bit. Like, right. You look at Spain, you look at Italy, you know, that sort of thing. And the things that African cultures have given to, you know, the European world, like the whole idea of universities, you know, modes of cultivation, hygiene, food, you know, things of that nature, right? And how, you know, you have strong African presences, a strong African presence in some European countries that, you know, it's diluted, but it's still there, right? Like, you know, you think about the Sicilians of Italy, so on and so forth. But what's very interesting is, like, during this period, for some reason, you don't have Europeans walking around with forced African names on them, right?
Right.
You don't have any Europeans like, you know, like my, you know, the family name of Kwesi was because some Moor owned or was the lord of my manor. You know what I mean? You don't have you know, Europeans, for instance, like speaking Igbo or, you know, or Shanti or, you know, or Arabic forced, you know, they were not forced to sacrifice their culture.
Right.
Right. They were not forced to sacrifice or have their culture stolen in order to benefit from the cultural exchange.
Right.
You know, I'm wondering, you know, part of me always thinks about what's the source of the beef? You know,
it's funny that you say that, like going back all the way to like kind of the origins of it. I go to comedians a lot. I think comedians are kind of the modern day philosophers. I go to there's a piece that Eddie Griffin did a few years back. I forget what the title of the whole special was, but he did this whole thing where he talked about how the reason white people came and subjugated black people is because white people are descendants of black people. Like the humanity, civilization started in Africa and spread outward. And he was saying that they came back because kids always come home and try to fuck your shit up after they kind of got some independence on them and they got their own shit. And I was like, you know what? He's got a fucking point there. Like, he's got a little bit of a point there. So he's talking about, he's like, hi, mom and dad. He's like, teach me how to dance. It's a great special too. Like, damn, I wish I could remember what the title of it was, but he's got some great ones. But yeah, like there's a whole, like, I'm also interested in kind of the origins of it, because if you find out where shit started, you might be able to kind of tackle it from the base of it, because that's kind of how we have to deal with it now. Is you have people that are taught, like you said, it's a learned behavior. It's not, people aren't, like, there are countless studies that prove that racism is not something children are born with, like children. But then as soon as you get to that level of children being able to learn stuff, and then they take the toddlers, and toddlers will play with each other. They don't give a shit. They have no concept of anything. But you get to that 2 to 5 year old range when they've heard some stuff from people. They put them in a room. They give them some toys to choose from, and it's like I saw one where it was a black doll and a white doll, and they chose the white doll, and both the black baby and the white baby did that because they are taught that there is something better about it. It's the same doll, like it's the same, there's nothing different about, and it's just like, and that's right there. And you see how early it gets taught, how early those things, are ingrained in children. And like, so I understand how hard it can be for someone who is 15, who, is being for 14 years have been taught one way to like make a decision a different way. There was a, kind of on a different tangent. There was a kid who I think was 15 or 16 years old whose parents were anti-vax his whole life. His siblings were not vaccinated, and I think he turned 15 and went and got vaccinated because he was like, fuck this shit. But it was like he had to, make some quiet moves and kind of skulk his way around to get it done. And it's the
biggest move he had to make was like that change of thought, and
like he had to get himself educated.
Right. And that's, to have the wherewithal, to understand that you may not know everything, and to change the bad behaviors that you have learned. I mean, it's not easy. I'm not gonna lie. You know what I mean? It's not easy. Anyone who, anybody who's had like an addiction can talk about that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Anybody who, say for instance, like changed up their whole routine, like, fitness or what have you, they could talk about like how difficult it is to change that mindset. But it is the hallmark of maturity to be able to be open to understanding that you may not know every fucking thing, and that you could be on the wrong side of shit. It's
very true. A friend of mine came over recently. We did a little outdoor hangout, and he was talking about, he's like, he's like, I don't like the idea of defund the police. And I was like, why not? He's like, I don't know what it means. I was like, all right, so like that's where your action comes into play. You have to do the research. Because I'll be honest, the first time I heard it, I was like, what? I'm like, we need police. That was my first reaction. Like, we need police. Like, I don't understand. But then I did a little research, and I was like, oh, okay, this makes perfect sense. Because, like, yeah, the 100% we have. Because here's the thing. You're going to tell me we don't have enough money for social programs. We don't have enough money for all these other things. And yet for 3-4 months now, every police department across the country has had just endless supply of rubber bullets, smoke, all the riot, endless supply, endless. Where's this money coming from? Where is this money coming from? Because their budget is insanely high, and yeah, there's definitely a disparity in how that money is divvied up. People have done an incredible job on the internet with just like showing with cartoons, and someone did it with cereal, and it was fucking brilliant. And it was just like, here's this little pour into housing and this and that and education, after school program, and then it's like, here's the rest of it in the police department. He's like, now what we want to do is like divvy it up. And I was like, that's perfect. I'm like, and if you look at that, and if you still don't get it, there's something wrong with you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't, it's that act. And that's why I was telling him, I'm like, it was the same, like, cause he said, he kind of had that initial thing about Black Lives Matter too. Like, he had kind of a defensive, position on it when he first heard it. And I was like, well, that's the point. And like this country, I would say this country especially, because I feel like in other countries this isn't the case. People are loath to do the work. They just don't want to do it unless it is presented to them. Here is what the thing is. Here are the simple facts. Like, to do the work and to figure it out. That's why we cling to this fucking nonsense two-party shit so hard, is because anything else is going to be way more work for us as a people. Like, we cling to it because, hey, it's easy to say I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, that's
even though if that fucks your shit up, even though if they're not doing the right thing for you, but you are standing against the other side, and they turn everything into a one or the other.
That's the binary of it.
They turn it into the Republicans are saying this, I don't agree with that, I'm a Democrat.
That's that's interesting. That it's an interesting observation that you made about this country. You are definitely not wrong. I think also, again, that's partly by design. That's part of the education, the education system that we have here. The fact that I think we're the only country in the quote unquote developed world, one of the few countries, period, that does not have education baked into our Constitution. Like, education here in the United States is a privilege. It's not a right. Yep. And we treat it that way. We treat it that way definitely with the public school system. The whole fact that schools are funded based off of tax revenue of the area in which that school is in this country is complete and utter bullshit. Yep. That's why, of course, and I'm saying this as an educator. You know what I mean? Because I've been on the front lines.
That's how I first met you. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Not just on the collegiate level, but I've also taught on the high school level. And the thing about it is like, the kids know. That's the whole thing. The kids know, like, when they are getting short shrifted, right? And this ties back into the defunding of the police and whatnot. Because I have taught at schools, at charter schools, with these so-called problem kids. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When people talk about the gangs in Chicago and blase spleece, I have taught some of these quote-unquote gang members, right? And first of all, anybody who talks about gang violence in Chicago does not know the history of the gangs in Chicago.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, those students hit me to some game, right? They hit me to the reason why you have so many people wilding out is because the gang structure was dismantled during the 90s when they put all the gangs in prison. So you have a lot of these kids are just around here floundering. They're not even gangs. You know what I mean? Because on top of that, being a quote unquote drug dealer does not make the money it used to.
No.
Right? It doesn't they're really there ain't no big kingpins out here.
Right.
And what most of these kids want is they want direction They want a job. They want an opportunity.
Yep.
Not an opportunity to be exploited. Not an opportunity to, be thrown in jail, or like they want to do the work.
Yeah.
They want guidance.
Yeah, and that's
You
the
know what
thing.
I'm saying?
That's the thing. Like people look at it like, oh, it's just like a violence thing. It's just no, like they're out there putting in work. They're out there hustling. Like they're selling whatever they
Right.
need to sell to make money so they could live, so they could eat.
Right. And the thing is, when they talk about defunding the police, it would be all violent. No, if you defund the police and take some of those funds over to like housing programs, job training programs, so on and so forth, you wouldn't need all those militarized police out on the streets.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And the cops could actually do the initial job was what, to protect and serve.
Yep.
Not to protect property and serve the rich, but to protect and serve their communities. If the communities are healthy,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, then, it makes the cops' job easier. On top of that, if the community is healthy, it makes the economy of the fucking city or state or country healthier. I mean, that's another ill thing about the pathology. It makes you stupid. Do you realize that if, for instance, talk about a rich cat, right? Like, actually, the clusterfuck that's happening right now with the U.S. economy is a perfect example of this fuckery, right? And how the pathology makes you stupid, how the pathology makes you short-sighted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How the pathology actually winds up hurting the person who believes in it the most.
Yep.
Like what is it? What is it? Like our GDP fucking crashed last week, last Friday?
Yeah.
Something
Yeah.
like
With a 33% drop.
like bottomed the fuck out.
Yeah.
That was because of the pathology. Again, like I can successfully argue that every problem that we're having currently with this pandemic in this country, the response to it is all racially motivated. And this is the part where racism hurts the racist.
Yeah.
And I think they're beginning to see it. Of course, they don't want to address it the way that I address it, because that's opening a whole another,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Can of worms, to dissect and process and disseminate. But I will say this: I would challenge anybody to tell me that racism is not a factor of why we are in the position that we are in this country right now, economically, in terms of world health, in terms of course, our social and political unrest. And nobody can successfully argue. It's like, no, that's not.
You can't. I mean, our entire history is built on racism. Like there's no part of, like, America doesn't exist without racism. Like if you look at even the little bit of history that's taught in schools, even if you look at that and you think, oh no, this is all fine, and like this isn't racism, like, then you don't know what the fuck you're reading. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're looking at. Like, every single part of it. We came in and we were like, here's some fucking syphilis blankets, get off my lawn. And they're like, whose lawn? What are you talking about? Whose lawn? Like, that's not your lawn.
Yeah, and then we don't want to work this crop, so let's get these cats from over here and ship them over here to do that job,
Right. And it's funny because people like to the deflect game. There are people that, like, I feel like they need to be in hockey because their deflection game is strong. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they were like, oh, well, you know what? Like the kings and like the kings in Africa sold the slaves. I'm like, that's not a good thing. Like, that doesn't excuse the fact that, like,
excuse me, motherfuckers buying.
Yeah, like it's like, oh well, I was on the street and there was this pimp and he was just he was offering me this woman to buy. Like that doesn't make you immune to the fact that you're buying a hooker. Like, like god damn it! Like this is not like the deflection game is so strong because they just go into these like tangent subjects and with black with the police officers, well they kill white people more often and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, even, and this is what I posted about on Facebook, like the question I asked you, and I to this day, like it wasn't something I believed in. It was just like I wanted to have that conversation, but it was just like it was such an easy like now with like more knowledge and more understanding, it's such an easy answer that like having that debate back then or start a discussion back then would have been fucking stupid, a waste of time. So like I honestly appreciate that you never even responded to it. But I was like, even if 5% of all police interactions end poorly, like what about all the other 100,000 who fucking cares?
Right.
Those are supposed to end that way.
Right.
Like it's supposed to end in a good way. It's not supposed to end in death or violence or like you're not supposed to get tased. Like god damn it. Like the Atlanta, that pissed me off nearly as much as the George Floyd situation because now it's just a battle of, well, is it a dangerous weapon or is it like it was just like they're trying to find a way to not put this guy to jail because he shot a man in the back. Well, he had a gun. Right. Well, he didn't have a gun. He had a taser. That's why like you use the taser first because it's a de-escalating weapon, right? But like if it's not a dangerous weapon, why are we using it?
Right. And then he was shot in the back, which means he was running away, which means that you were not in danger.
Well, his argument then was because I guess he had gotten a hold of the taser, but he had used it. Like, so it has 2 charges. It was used up. So it either is a dangerous weapon, and he's endangering the lives of others, or it's not a dangerous weapon, which is why we use it in the first place, and it had no charges left. But there is no way in which you didn't shoot a man in the back. It's just like, and they're just trying to deflect out of it, and it's like the lack of onus that all these motherfuckers have is incredible. Like they just, oh no, there's this and this, and every situation, and I'm so thankful for technology and the way it's advanced because we have record now, and then you have these situations where, Derek Chauvin was arrested, but it took 3 fucking days. If a police officer suspects I did some shit, they can put me in a prison overnight to find the evidence. There was at least...
They don't even have to expect...
Right.
They have to suspect me some shit.
Right. They can put you in... And
right, depending upon if I'm unlucky with the interaction of whatever police officer I dealt with.
So they can just do that and find the evidence. They can do the research after the fact. They had at no less than 3 different camera angles showing what this man did, and it took them 3 days to find something criminal, which I wanted to choke the life out of that lawyer. The Hennepin County lawyer, when he was like, oh, like it was wrong what he did, but I need to determine if there was a criminal act. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
They were trying to wait for those 3 days to see if their outrage would blow over.
I was like,
before they actually had to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually what you see with a lot of these, situations. It's like the cops are waiting for this shit to blow over to the next one. And that's the thing. This cannot blow over. We need to be up on this, and, shout out to everybody that continues to be out there on the front lines, protesting, lending their voice, making their voices be heard. I give nothing but the utmost respect to them. Like what happened in Portland, I look at what happened in Portland as a victory, that, the federal troops bounced, you know what I'm saying? And, in addition, of course, to Black Lives Matter, I have to give the shout out to the Wall of Moms and the Wall of Dads, and also give a huge shout out to the military who came in there and fucking were the protectors of democracy. Like, for real, thank you for your service. You know what I mean? Like, salute to that, because that's what it's all about, you know? And it's stuff like that that's heartening to me, you know?
Yeah. I remember seeing, it was one of the early weeks of the protests, and I think it was in Minnesota, and there were just like a bunch of white dudes strapped up, and they were like, we came out here to march with our brothers and sisters because we have noticed that the police behave a little differently when you have armed white men on the streets than when you have unarmed black people. And I was like, that's fucking, you know what? That's real shit, because like, look what happened 2 months earlier in fucking Michigan. These motherfuckers came in, strapped the fuck up into the Capitol building. Not a single rubber bullet, no fucking tear gas, no nothing. I'm like, there's a disparity here, and if you don't see it, maybe you need to take off them rose-colored glasses. Like, something's...
That's some straight up bully shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's some straight punk bitch bully shit right there, right? Because, what was it, even a couple of weeks ago, with the black gun groups, what's one of the groups, like, Not Fucking Around Anymore? One of those groups? I forget. I don't know the title.
Yeah, I don't know the names. I've seen the videos. And it's very cool.
Like a militia, like, walking through, you know.
Yeah, it was in St. Louis, I think it was.
Yeah, you know, that race war that people keep talking about. Yeah, y'all real timid and tender to fire that first bullet when you see, you know what I'm saying, black and brown folk armed like you. Like, what happened to you? You know, what happened to, like, all your big guns? What happened to Big Willie at that point? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's another. I mean, it's all bully shit. And the thing with bullies is that, you know, bullies, you gotta blast them in the snot box.
Yep.
Like straight up, like, bullies, you stand up to bullies. Like, best believe if in his young life Donald Trump got blasted in the snot box about 2, 3, 4 times, this country would not be in the position that we're in right now.
Yeah, but it's one of those situations where you take the people in power do their damnedest to stay in power by separating themselves and theirs from everybody else. Mm-hmm. That's why you have the most private schools that cost the most money, which means only the richest people can go there. And the richest people, they don't do, like, there is no, like, there's always these you know, movies where you have the like token poor kid gets into the rich school. That shit doesn't happen in real life.
Right.
It's just the rich kids in there. There's nobody to stand up to the bullies, and you know, there's nobody to, like, give perspective. There's just rich people in there, and they just reinforce their own bullshit. So when they come out into the world, into the public sector, into the private sector, they're just going to continue to reinforce their bullshit. That's why all these, you know, back alley deals and shit like that. That's why you see monopolies, and that's why, like, it's hilarious to me that a man who has as much business as he has, and granted mostly failed businesses, but, you know, let's not talk about that in public, because
we can. Like, what's he going?
Well, no, I just mean like as a country, we don't like to acknowledge the fact that he's mostly failed every business that he's fucking attempted, except his fucking hotels, which the only reason that shit's around is because motherfuckers like to stay at ritzy places, and, like, rich motherfuckers like to do rich shit. That's the only reason that's still there.
You know, what's the funny thing about Trump is, like, the tackiest rich motherfucker out there.
Real talk.
So, like, his shit is like the Section 8 of rich people. He's like Section 8 housing. like straight up, I'm sorry, like, but when your hotel's got bed bugs in them, that's some slumlord shit.
What? I didn't even hear about that.
Yeah, homie. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny as shit. And I know how much of a problem that is. I've had bed bugs in my life. Yeah. That's a problem.
I mean, I've dealt with that too. But, like, yeah, people were complaining in Mar-a-Lago, like, you know, bed bugs and shit like that. You know, it's not like he's got a refined palate, so it's not like you're gonna eat the finest the finest meals
Right.
at them motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? It's
They
like,
probably got some bland ass steaks and like just like what looks good, whatever looks good.
Look, I'm gonna break it down like this. All right, the motherfucker had a basketball team come to the White House,
And he fed
and
them
he
McDonald's.
McDonald's. And put it on the good of China to make it seem like that shit. Like, I'm sorry, not even the poorest of the poor in the hood would do that trifling ass shit.
At least put on a barbecue or something.
That's what you would get in the hood.
like grill some shit up. God damn it! Like
you would a potluck, something.
Yeah.
You know,
you gotta let Karen bring the fucking potato salad with the raisins. You know.
Well, I don't know about the potato salad, but at least the effort. See, that's the thing. That's the whole.
He probably didn't think about it until the last minute either. He probably was like, "Oh shit, they're coming today. Billy, go buy some McDonald's."
It's not, and that's and it's like, as I get older, and especially seeing what's happening right now, right, and seeing how people regard money and the illusion that people have about money and what money does. As you can see, again, from this president alone, is that money does not make you special. Money does not make you intelligent. Money does not make you compassionate. Money does not. What did? See, I'm referencing Real Housewives in New York with the with the. I think she called herself the Countess, with Luann when she did that song "Money Can't Buy Your Class." That's some real shit. You know what I'm saying?
Real talk.
That's some real ass talk. And that's what, especially in this country, that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with the since the president is quote unquote the front man of the country,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Collectively, we are dealing with a trifling ass motherfucker who's the front man of the country.
Yeah.
And because of that, he's emboldened a whole bunch of trifling ass, bitter, bitch ass motherfuckers to act Brody, like they think that they are important and they think that they matter because their homunculus is now up on the world stage, right?
I like that. That's a good word for him. It's a good word for him. I like it.
But the problem is that shit stinks, and pisses yellow.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world sees the piss and shit that this country propped up as president, and they're laughing at us. The whole world is laughing at us.
Yeah.
Even the people that Edie Trumpine, as I like to call him, that he worships and wants to be like, are laughing at us. Kim Jong-un, if he's still alive, or they're still doing the Weekend at Bernie shit with him, his corpse is laughing at us.
Right.
Putin is like, job well done.
Yeah. Putin's just waiting for it. If we got to a point where he thought he could strike, he would. Right. I think if we got to a point where he was like, you know what, they don't know what the fuck they're doing right now. You know what? Let's just do a little quick, like a little sample. Let's take Alaska. Like,
yeah, right. The interesting thing about that is that in terms of destabilizing the U.S., this is the most that Putin could do. Like, if you think about it militarily, I mean, the whole dissolution of the Soviet Union, so on and so forth.
Yeah, they couldn't fight us on 1-to-1. They couldn't fight us.
Yeah, in terms of a traditional war, no being
the only war that's
but
going to happen is when China decides to just throw all the bodies at someone and just take over.
you know what I mean. But even then, it was like with Putin, all he had to do was stoke the bullshit that was already happening in this country, and that's all he could do, and
Yep.
that's all he really needed to do, right? Because the U.S. The U.S. again is it's interesting how little dick energy the U.S. is because having the most bombs and shit
Right.
like that. Like if you got true big dick energy, you don't need to
Nope.
you don't need to say, well, we need more carriers and shit like that. You know what I mean? That's
We
like
have we have
it's
whole
like
we
old
have
dude.
actual bases. There's like a base or two in Texas that are just full of tanks, like M1 Abrams, that are just sitting there collecting actual dust. Like we we're plenty fucking armed.
Right. But psychologically as a country, we're fucking prepubescent idiots.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. You know what? It's kind of like a video game. It's exactly like a video game. I've been playing Halo recently, so I just I just made this connection. We have all these guns kind of everywhere, but there's only like 2 or 3 guys that are like qualified to use them. Everybody else is just like you're gonna pick up you're gonna pick up their gun because they're gonna be on the ground.
Right.
Like as you're progressing through the levels, you get the one guy who can do some shit. He's like, fucking Billy died, or Timmy died. God damn it! Like,
let me get shit. Yeah. Not everybody is John Wick, and it's funny that we've gone on this whole subject because weren't we supposed to talk about Comicsgate?
Yeah. No, I you know what? I started recording at some point because I was like, you know what? This is a good conversation. We're like, this will be fine because this is kind of like what happens. The Tangents podcast is like we start and then it's just whatever happens. Comicsgate is a very interesting thing. I mean, we could do a pivot. It's perfectly fine. Like so here's let me kind of give you my spiel, kind of like where I see what's happening, and you just because I feel like you have a very unique perspective on this because you are an independent creator. You've been doing your own thing for a long time, and like that side of the world better than I think most. I think better than even some of these major guys kind of trying to go out into the independent space. And so what happened? What seems to have happened in the major industry is that you have Marvel, you have DC, and they see a potential market in the gay, the LGBTQ, like people of color, like those markets. So they have made like some would say forced strides into presenting some of these characters as either characters that already exist, i.e. Black Captain America, or female Thor, or by creating new characters like a Kamala Khan or Miles Morales. Although I would say that's kind of like he's been around for a long time. I wouldn't even say that's part of this diversity push. But there has been, like, I have personally seen kind of everyone has a gay best friend. Like, there's something like, it seems like in every new kind of modern writer's repertoire there's a gay best friend, or there's a this, or there's a that. Like, there is something that they bring in to kind of diversify the cast. I've honestly seen it the most in DC because I feel like Marvel already has like a very diverse, rich character cast. DC is struggling in that area really, really hard, honestly. So like I read all of New 52 kind of straight, like, which was a task, but I did it. And
there were only the gems in the
real
whole
talk.
New 52.
Real talk. The best shit was the shit I never thought would be the best. Aquaman was good. The Frankenstein Age of Shade, Animal Man, like that whole side of shit was great. But then you had like Batman was okay.
I mean, the Court of Owls was my shit. Actually,
Court of Owls was very good. There were things about the Batman books that were very good, but there was a lot of stuff in between that was kind of meh.
Got you. The Brian Azzarello, Cliff Chang Wonder Woman shit for me was really top notch. Like, that shit was dope. Like how Azzarello kind of took that and deconstructed. Wonder Woman's
100%. I did not. I enjoyed Wonder Woman. I did not like Wonder Woman and other shit. I didn't feel like her and Superman and her and the Justice League. It was kind of meh. Justice League, which my favorite books are team books, and Justice League, that whole run was it was it
was. I would say that whole run was kind of like the first X-Men movie.
It had the essential elements, but it didn't really do the most with them.
Yeah, it was like
okay. It bothered me because the way they structure the world, and like it felt like they were like, hey, this is what's gonna happen, we're rebooting, but then some of the writers were like, yeah, but I still want all the things to have happened. Like Scott Snyder was like, no, all the shit I wrote already happened. So like now you're telling me that Bruce has gone through 5 Robins and one of them got killed in 5 years?
5 years?
You are a bad fucking role model, bro. Maybe you need to retire.
Oh, it's like, I actually heard some of the, I got some of the inside info of how the New 52 came about. And yes, it was a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And yes, also the New 52, even before I got the information that I got, I felt that the New 52 was a response and a late response to the success of Marvel Studios, of the Marvel movies and whatnot. And so I felt that the New 52 as a whole was like sort of trying to make the DC universe the Marvel Ultimate Universe, which is basically what the Marvel movies are based on. I saw that from jump. It's like,
to a lot of points. They definitely went more they like took the main Avengers mythos and put it under like the Ultimates kind of streamlining process.
Yes, they did. Which definitely worked. You know 100%. What I mean, for the MCU.
Oh my god, yeah.
But since then, like DC have been playing catch up, and the New 52 was definitely a catch up sort of situation. It was also a situation where you had fanboy wishes come true that should not have, namely Superman and Wonder Woman getting together.
Yeah,
that should have never happened, because I'm gonna break it down like this: both Superman and Wonder Woman are tops. They're tops, so it's like, 2 tops getting together, like 2 bottoms getting together. It doesn't work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And
it worked because that's why it worked with her and Steve Trevor for the first little bit of New 52. Like, it made sense, and you could see the whole like puppy dog thing he had for her, and like he would bend over backwards to make her happy even when they were working up, and like it worked. That worked for me. Like, that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's a reason why. Clark and Lois work. You know what I mean? It's like, even though, Clark is more powerful, he's a top in that respect. Lois matches him in terms of like attitude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude.
And attitude.
Phrasing it that way makes perfect sense. Like, now I'm thinking about it. She's top emotionally and personally because he's very much a soft dude. Even as Superman, he's a soft dude. Like, he's never gonna the one time he had to kill a guy, that just haunted him forever. Right.
Good dude like that. You know what I mean?
But Lois would dead a bitch in a minute. She would.
Yeah. if she needs to.
Yeah. If the situation was at hand, pow, I gotta move on. I got shit to do. I'm Lois Lane.
That's why Batman and Catwoman work. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I mean, Bruce is that hard ass, and Selina is the fluid nature. She's the one that can knock him off his square. And again, because he's so rigid, you know what I mean? And she's so fluid that it's the yin and yang, right?
Yeah.
Of relationships that work.
100%.
There was no yin and yang with the Superman Wonder Woman relationship. This doesn't make sense romantically.
And
you know what I mean?
And I feel like they even wrote it a little bit that way because it was just like they both kind of wanted something. They both kind of wanted the same thing out of it. And she's like, let's just fuck. And then they took down a mountain and like that's the guy. And it's like, that's the kind of shit that like you would have, like, if essentially they turned them into like a good version of Ultraman and Superwoman. Like they had kind of this like, you know, we are the most powerful, therefore we like it makes sense for us to be together. But like in reality, it doesn't, because like personality wise, they're not even close.
Feeling each other, like you know, it never felt real.
And then he lost his powers. She became the God of War. She's like, you know, I'm a little too busy for you now.
You're like,
you know, you can't break a girl back. Like I gotta go do some shit.
Like I got a station now.
Yeah.
In like, you know, metaphysical life and shit. Like, you know, I just got too many crazy things.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, right he lost the ability to blow her back out, and then she got to move on. You know, she got to get a different dude.
Facts.
But like in that, there was that great example of editorial versus like not even an editorial, but this was just like editorial not paying attention to what's happening. Because with Batgirl had a good run. I would say a great run. To me, like, it was the strongest I'd ever seen Barbara Gordon. Like, she was kicking ass, taking names through the whole Court of Owls, Night of Owls situation, everything through whatever, 40 some odd issues. No, not even 40. It was like 30 some odd issues. And then it was like, she had this, she found the roommate and they were good friends. And she's like, it literally ends with, I'm never going anywhere. I'm like, you're my friend. I'm never going to leave you. And then they bring on this new art team and a new writer. And literally the first thing you see is her leaving and saying, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, that's not even, you can't end the story with, I'm never leaving. And then the next thing you see is, peace out, I'm out. Like, that's not, you got to give me something. Right. And then they turned her into this child. They turned this graduate student, badass superhero into a child who was, she fell in love with social media. And then they introduced a gay roommate or a gay best friend or whatever it was. And it just kind of, to me, that one instance wasn't a big deal. Because like gay people exist. Like, it's not like you can't just, you're roommates with someone and then like they happen to be gay. Like, that's a thing. But people, like, you can meet gay people everywhere. Like,
that was the premise of Three's Company.
Right. That's funny.
So,
but like that, you know. And to me, that was an example of like editorial kind of not giving a shit and saying like, do whatever you want, but then that ruined the book, right? And I feel like people like related shit.
I did love that Burnside costume though. I thought that was like
the costume is great, and I think if they had done, like you said, an ultimate version of Batgirl where it was like, we're gonna go back to square one, day one. This is Batgirl first costume. That's, to me, perfect. Holy shit. But for her to come out of that badass costume and this era of just being a badass and turn into this, like, child, again, I really can't get over the fact that now, to me, I know there are people who argue, like, oh, like, the best era, like, the best way to draw superheroes is, like, with superhero features and, like, big titties is part of the package. I think that's fucking stupid. But when you go from a woman's body and a woman kicking ass to this child, like, it's a different presentation. It was hard for me, genuinely, while I read the whole thing begrudgingly, because it wasn't a great arc, honestly. I read the whole thing, and it was hard for me to believe that she was meant to be a graduate student. Because you just, like, the behavior, like, all of a sudden she's in this, like, social media and cell phones, and, like, she knew about this shit last week. She was Oracle. She knows about social media.
Right. Like, she invented social media. Like, Oracle invented
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure in DC she invented that shit. It's like...
But in terms of the strange case of Barbara Gordon, and in terms of, you know, what we're talking about in considering diversity and considering, you know, the claims of Comicsgate with mainstream comics, this is the only point where I can say that they have some merit. Not because of forced diversity.
Right.
All right. To be honest with you, up until diversity became a thing, actually DC and Marvel, well, I would say especially DC, and then I'm also going to lump in Wildstorm with this as well, right? Um, you've always had like these diverse characters. Like if you think about in the 90s, right? 90s, you had Steel coming out. You know what I mean?
I love that movie.
You know, yeah, well, Steel was a great character. The movie fucked it up, but Steel was a great character.
I love the movie, even like it's a damn bad cheesy movie, but I love it. It's just
that movie is horrible.
Yeah, but watching Shaq do superhero shit is kind of like.
I saw that on a Saturday morning. I don't know what movie was more terrible of that period, Spawn or Steel. It's a toss-up.
Oh, we can have a conversation about that. I love Spawn. I think Spawn was a great movie.
We could, but that's not this conversation. No, but you had Steel. Of course, Milestone Media, which was basically DC's Death Row Records. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh, I like that. That's a good description of that. I like that.
Well, because like Milestone was its own company and it was distributed by DC, much like Death Row was its own company distributed by Interscope, right? So
I did not know they were distributed by Interscope originally.
Yes.
Oh, I always perceived Death Row as its own entity entirely.
No, that's
I knew Aftermath was under Interscope. I knew that, but I didn't know Death Row was.
Death Row, that was the beginning of the relationship between Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Holy shit.
So Milestone was pretty much that for DC. Even when you talk about later in the decade, like I'm looking at books like Planetary with Jakita Wagner, who was
I still haven't read that, but like
you were missing out. I know that Warren Ellis is being dragged through the coals right now.
Yeah, Jesus.
But Planetary and the first 12 issues of The Authority, like Planetary, gave us
The Authority.
Jakita Wagner. The Authority gave us like probably the baddest badass gay character ever created. The Midnighter.
The best moment in, I think it might have been in those first 12, maybe the second run. I forget where. But there was a moment where Apollo's sitting there and he's like, I want to rip his fucking arms off, and he's sitting there and then a Midnighter just leans over. He's like, I just love you to bits sometimes, and I fucking love that moment.
That was when Mark Miller took over, and he made them being gay was this whole thing. But what Ellis did in the first 12 of Planetary, and it was in the second arc with the alien invasion, where Apollo's weakened, because he's been fighting the whole time, has to recharge, and he's like, I gotta go back out there. Midnight is like, but you'll die, and then they have this tender moment where that they're gay, and it was like this thing of like, oh, Midnighter and Apollo are gay. Whatever, Midnight's badass.
But that's the thing. They were like, he wrote them that way in Stormwatch too, because when he brought them in on Stormwatch, like he brought them in gay, and then there's a great moment where, because they brought them in from the cold, because they were like secret agents and whatever, and then Apollo hugs Synergy. He hugs her, he's like as a thank you, like thank God, we're so happy to be kind of back with people, and and you see Midnighter kind of wince at it, and Jackson King walks over and he's like, I know, that's okay.
He's just okay, because Midnighter crying a little bit. He's like happy, But all that to say is that with the 90s, if you think about Vertigo, if you think about the whole Vertigo line, if you think about Milestone, if you think about characters like Steel and Jakita Wagner and Tesla Strong and the Midnighter, if you think about Kate Kane as Batwoman, if you think about Renee Montoya, eventually becoming
Montoya, the Question.
Her version of the Question. You had these companies actually having more honest portrayals of diverse lifestyles and cultures than you did when diversity became a thing. When diversity became a thing amongst the corporate too, then what you kind of saw was what I like to call the discoization of diversity.
Yeah.
The the discoization of diversity is when you have people who are not of a culture now seeing that the culture is making big money, so they make their approximations of that culture in order to like get all the money, like disco. You know what I'm saying? like what happened to disco,
i.e. Black Lightning.
Right. Well, you know what? Black Lightning I give all respect to Black Lightning from the beginning, from Tony Isabella and Trevor Von Eden. Definitely in the 90s when they relaunched Black Lightning, that was a good little run with him and Eddie Newell. The television series is the shit. Sorry, the television series.
All right. Because I feel like it is on topic, I would like to just tangent on that for just a second. I think the second season is infinitely better than the first season. I think the first season, while obviously there are great moments that address racism and just a whole lot of shit. Just I can't even boil it down to just a couple words. There are great moments. I think it went a little heavy-handed on certain shit. It was hard for me to like right out the gate. Okay, fine, he gets pulled over. The cops don't treat him right. I get it. But then the rest of the show is about how he is the most known person in that entire city. So for me, like, it then makes that opening scene for me very hard to believe, because like, you're going to tell me the cops don't know this man and everybody else knows him?
Well,
everybody else knows him. Like he knows all the drug dealers and all the politicians and just everybody, but the cops don't know him. And that was like, like, I get the point that was made, but it was like, I felt that they came in really, really heavy handed. Even though the cast was almost entirely black. And it was honestly, it was very refreshing. I grew up on black shows. Like I actually have been planning this video. This is going to sound weird, but I've been planning this video, kind of explaining, my idea. Like I feel like I was raised by black fathers. I didn't have a father in my life, but like everything that I watched was black TV, and you had black fathers. The role models I grew up with were black men. So like that's how I was raised. So for me to like see a show that it, like, I was just looking at something, I was looking at they were talking about the Parkers, and they were talking about like all these shows. They were talking about Living Single, and I was like, "Fuck, why don't we get good ass shows like this anymore?" Like Living Single was the shit, and then we just don't have good shit like that no more.
Living Single still holds up. I was, for real. As a matter of fact, before we had this, I was watching reruns of Living Single. That shit still holds up. Like, that shit still works.
It's a great series.
And yeah. Now with Black Lightning, you said, did you watch season 3 yet of Black Lightning?
Season 3's out?
It's been out.
Wait.
You need to catch up. It may be on Netflix now. Yeah.
Hold on. Yeah. No, they only had the 2 seasons. Season 2 was with Crisis.
Oh, there are 3 seasons. There are 3 seasons. So
I'm not crazy. 3 seasons?
Yeah.
Was season 3 the one with Crisis? Was season 3?
Season 3 was the one with the Crisis episode.
Okay, yeah. So yes. Yeah, no, I've seen everything. I've seen everything now. Yeah. Yeah, I did watch season 3. Season 3 then. I'm sorry. Then season 3 is what I meant. Season 3 I feel like is the better of them, because it felt more like a comic book, and it did not feel like it was incidentally a comic book.
Yeah, well, what was interesting about season 3 is that from the first 2 build-ups of the first 2 seasons, the thing that I loved about season 3 is that it was unapologetic in its metaphor, you know what I mean, about African American life. Like, it was unapologetic.
Yeah.
Like,
the whole arc with
Gravedigger. Gravedigger was basically DC's. He became DC's Isaiah Bradley. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and what would really happen, with somebody like that in the mix. Like, I love the fact that it completely and utterly went there. You know what I mean? It totally went there. And it was building up for those 3 seasons. Like, one of the things that I love about Black Lightning is that it's the first time on TV that you see a superpowered family. Like, it's a family of superheroes.
Yeah,
you know what
and
I mean?
You have the family dynamics as well as
even Lynn, straight up for the long. I want to cross over with Lynn and Iris, because those 2 sisters will pull out a rifle in a second. They will pull out a shotgun and blast.
You gotta do what you need to do. You gotta do what you need to do to protect your family. That's why I actually liked Iris's role in this most recent season of Flash as well, because she's kind of had more of a pivotal role as far as like just driving the story forward.
Right, and part of that is because, getting back into the whole discussions of diversity, right? Is that when people think of diversity, 9 times out of 10, especially when it comes to comics, right? I see this all the time. I see this especially in a lot of Black comics groups, right? They're always talking about, we need more Black characters. We need more Black characters. We need more Black characters. And I'm like, no, what you need are more Black creators. What you need are more Black, brown, other POC, women in the gatekeeping positions.
Yeah.
Right?
That's been the biggest problem in society, is you have all these straight white men in positions of power, and they get to decide who gets to do the things. And that's why I like realistically, that's why I like the independent space more, as far as comics and just really creative media in general, because you have people just doing their thing, and then it's like, oh, you're Black, oh, you're gay or bi or what, like, that's just like, it's who you are, but like, you are creating the thing that I'm enjoying. So like the who it becomes just as important. Because I feel like in comics, we have a bridge, right? I read a comic book and I put it down. I don't have to know who Warren Ellis is or what he might have done, or, like, I don't, there's a differentiator there. But if like with indie, inherently, you get to know the people. You get to know the people that are doing it, because you are buying from them.
Right. I mean, that is the thing about, about the industry. What's interesting is that, historically, the fan art or the fan, artist becoming the star, or, the writer becoming the star. That really started in the 60s. You could say that Jack Kirby is the first comic book superstar, right? He's the prototype of he and Stan Lee are the prototype of the superstar artist and the superstar writer. Right. Like, one of the reasons why Marvel resonates with people so much is exactly the reason why you say you resonate with indie so much more. Is that Stan Lee, brilliant marketer that he was, he also made himself the face of Marvel.
Stan Soapbox.
Arguably even more so than his characters, right? So with Marvel, especially from that point on, you felt more of a personal connection with Marvel, because it's like, Stan Lee is a real person.
That's funny. I've felt that, and I've thought about that before. I was like, I just feel more connected with Marvel characters. But that's a very good point, because like, I know the names behind DC, but I don't know those people.
Right. And with me being a creative and stuff like that, and really, I look at comics as, comics are my art form. It's more than just a business, my life, my art life, is based on comics, and comics are my medium. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's much more than dope. So as an artist, you know, part of my thing was to meet other artists and pick their brain and, you know, understand where they were coming from, you know,
Right.
that sort of thing. And so meeting my heroes, quote unquote, you know, people say that you should never meet your heroes. I'm like, yeah, you should, because then you can figure out if they're real dudes or if they're assholes.
Yes. Yes.
And you can
Because
figure out like when I got into the game, you know, and started hobnobbing and, you know, figuring out my space and meeting these people, very early on, I came up with the mentality of, could I hang out with this person?
right.
If I could hang out with this person, then chances are I probably like their work more. And, you know, basically I fucks with you. If I can't hang out with you, it's like, you know, whatever, dog. You know what I mean? And the whole thing of, you know, just from afar, right? Which kind of goes into like this whole Comicsgate thing, and it definitely, the whole thing about Comicsgate ties into the other stuff that we were talking before, you know, politically and socially,
Right.
so on and so forth. Comicsgate is propagated by a bunch of cats who either started reading comic books in the 90s or professional wise were very popular in the 90s.
Right.
And the thing about 90s comic books is that 90s comic books were really toxic. Like, if you think about the early days of Image, if you think about the whole bad girl art movement, right? You think about 90% of the comic books in the 90s are unreadable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I would say especially in the indie space, and I would, at that point, I would count Image in the indie space,
Definitely.
because it was, a lot of it was, if not in. Let me rephrase that. It was Rob Liefeld. It was intentional parody and quote unquote homage, but like a lot of it was just like trying to figure out how to make as good a something as you had, you know, 6 months ago when you were working for Marvel.
Right.
I've watched a couple documentaries recently about that whole Image kind of departure, and there's obviously varying stories because there was a lot of people involved, but kind of a universal thing was that Todd McFarlane was kind of like, I'm the fucking superstar, you can't replace me. And when Marvel was like, sure we can, you're you're one factor of this book. So he quit, and when they were trying to, you know, the other artists were trying to negotiate for better terms and better treatment, and he was like, nah, we're leaving, fuck y'all. So like,
Right.
like his position was like, no, this wasn't like this wasn't a discussion. This was a statement of intent. Like, we are bouncing the fuck out of here. And then when they created that, like, him and a couple other people had characters in pocket, like, because they were going to introduce them in X-Force or they were going to introduce them in other books. So like Spawn was somebody, from what I've read, that was supposed to show up in Spider-Man at some point. And because he was like, fuck y'all, he just moved that to his own thing. Brigade, the cover of issue 3, I think, of Youngblood, that has Brigade on the cover and the Youngblood behind him. I just recently read an interview with Rob Liefeld that said originally that was the X-Force characters. Like, he had already drawn the cover. And he just, when he bounced, he just redrew the cover, and now it was a Youngblood character. So it was just like a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff was hodgepodge back in that era. And now when I look at stuff, there's that website right now that tracks all the Comicsgate stuff called all the Comicsgate fundraisers, called IndieCron. And just going through that list literally just gives me flashbacks to the 90s, to all this shit that was just like garbage. And I remember seeing all these ads in Wizard for books that like didn't deserve to have ads in Wizard. Like, I'm looking at it and I was like, people buy this? I'm like, how do you even have enough money to get an ad in Wizard? And like every month for 3 years. People buy this?
I'm gonna tell you, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna tell you, dude. It's like, because you were like in single digits when that shit was popping off. Like, I was in I was in college and I was
So you had full
working in
comprehension of the whole situation.
yeah, and I was working in a comic book store at the time. I was like at ground zero of seeing all that stuff. And even with, me at that point, I was like 18, 19, looking at that stuff, it was like, I mean, a lot of it was sizzle and no steak,
Yeah.
A lot of it was catering to prepubescent boys and teenage boys, like, and especially as a young artist coming up. And actually, it was because of Image and Milestone that, kind of put the stamp on, like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to get into comics. And for me, that was more so about notions of independence, and then also notions about creating characters that looked like me and that, resonated for me. But, looking at that as a young artist coming up during that time, I always knew that I wanted my stuff to say something. And a lot of these books weren't saying shit,
Yep.
Real
talk. Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't saying a goddamn thing. On top of that, they were like, a lot of these books were like stroke fantasies for these prepubescent boys.
Yep.
And even as a young man, a young adult, I'm looking at the artwork for these things. I'm like, how does that even turn you on? I mean, it's like this dude can't draw the female form to save his life. Like, and it gave me flashbacks to when I was 13 and I didn't really understand how to draw women, and my women looked like muscular men with basketballs on their chest. You know what I'm saying? So, seeing that as I'm trying to become a better artist and a more well-rounded artist, and seeing these other dudes with like this ridiculous, grossly misshapen, completely, it is definitely not titillating. You know what I mean? It was not titillating art.
Even I would say even because that was my early, like me finding those books and like the infinite number of fucking swimsuit specials for books like Warrior Nun. And like I always thought that was weird because I'm like, this is supposed to be a nun. Why is there a swimsuit special? Warrior Nun, like nuns don't wear swimsuits. By the way, like real quick aside, if you had told me 6 months ago, that they were making a TV show out of the Warrior Nun series, I would have lost my mind because I'm like, you're fucking crazy. Like, who would do that? She was a nun with cleavage. That doesn't make sense. Like, that makes no goddamn sense. Why would they do that? And then no, they did, and it's actually decent. But it's like that to me made no sense. Like even as a teenager, I was like, why does the nun have cleavage? Why does Evangeline was supposed to be like an agent of heaven? I was like, she's showing a lot of skin for an agent of heaven. Like, like I just feel like heaven would be maybe a little bit more conservative. At least through all the other representation of it in the media, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right. So yeah, so you have so what was also interesting about the 90s is like, yeah, you had that trash, right? But because of Neil Gaiman and also because of anime, that is when you began to see women coming to the cons in a big way, right? So, I'm from the era and the generation that, in the early days when I started going to cons really seriously in 94, 93, 94, 94. Most of the women that you would see at the conventions would be what are called booth babes.
Yep.
Which would be like these, models that would be at the booth, scantily clad. So like, these mouth breathing, stink butt dragon motherfuckers could like take a picture with them, to like, look, I'm with this hot chick. And it was sad. It was sad. Like I remember, actually, this was like 07. It's like one of the last booth babe moments that I saw, and I had a table, and I was right across from this other table that had some booth babes, and I would see like these dudes coming over taking pictures with them, and they look, oh god, these dudes were troglodytes, and I just caught the eye of one of them looking over, and I was just like, yeah, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like, Like, I totally get it. And what's also fascinating about that, so Neil Gaiman anime brings women, real women, like women who love comics. You know what I mean? The thing that when I was a teenager in the 80s growing up, if you found a cute girl that was into comics or video games or any of that shit, she was a unicorn.
Yep.
She was meant to be
That was the grand prize.
adored and cherished like the mythical queen she was. You know
It
what I mean?
was the grand prize at the everything, man. Like,
you know, now in 2020, you know, the industry, what they say, like, yeah, pretty much half of the buyers of comic books are female, are, you know, women. And they aren't the booth babes. They are, you know, real women, artists, writers, cosplayers, fans, so on and so forth. Like the Nirvana that I had dreamed of when I was 13 and 14
right.
is been made real. And you've got these bitter beta motherfuckers bitching about the fact that you have people of the opposite sex that like the shit that you like, that you could actually have the opportunity to get a date and have a conversation with if you fucking cut your hair, fucking brush your fucking teeth, fucking wash your ass, put some deodorant on, and didn't act like a fucking troll.
Hey,
that's... You know what I mean? You would live a happier life. But no. You know, they are encroaching on my little fantasy world. Fuck out of here, man.
It's,
you know what I'm saying?
It's very.
That's how I feel about it in a nutshell.
But I've actually like I've dipped a toe into the world and asked questions because I genuinely didn't understand the whole situation. To me, it just from on the surface, it was like, oh, you have people going out and making indie comics. Like, I don't understand what is controversial about that. And then they're talking about, you know, oh, well, there's this, you know, forced diversity in there. And I watched a video where this guy was like, oh, you know, my son like loves Captain America, but then like when I take him to the comic store, Captain America is black. And I was like, right, but there's also 40, 50 years of white Captain America. Like, you got plenty of shit for him to read if he must read or you can explain to him what the fuck happened. Like, it's a story. Tell him the story. Like, I don't understand. What is the problem here? And then people, you know, when Jane was Thor and they made this big fuck deal. Oh, what's his name? Like, she can't be Thor. That's his actual name. And then it took me a while because I didn't actually think it was that big a deal. I also thought for a minute, like, okay, well, that is his name. Like, that is kind of like they could have given her a different name. But then I thought back and I'm like, oh, wait, when Eric Masterson was Thor, he didn't have a different name. Eric Masterson was fucking Thor. He was a different dude and he was Thor. I was like, oh, wait. I'm like, wait a minute. Hold on. John Walker was Captain America.
Yeah.
Even Sam Wilson put the suit on for a specific issue and they made it was a beautifully written issue too, because I remember reading it. It was a situation where it was like a riot in a city and he like crashed into a costume shop and he tried to stop it and they're like, they're not fucking listening to me. And he sees the suit in the costume shop and he puts on a Captain America suit. Sam Wilson puts on a Captain America suit, goes out there and he starts calming people down, getting people organized. And he's like, they're not seeing the person under the suit. This is Captain America. This is the idea that is making these decisions and calming people down. And like it was like a beautifully written comic. So that's why, honestly, when they did the Sam Wilson Captain America book, I was disappointed in how they approached it. Because the way they approached it is that the way they wrote it, and this is what the feeling was, that the whole fucking country was against him. It was clear that it was like a bunch of Republicans, it was a bunch of conservatives that didn't want, like, it was clear what they were writing, but but they didn't get it. They very much wrote it like the hood loved him and America hated him.
So basically, yeah. So it was, again, that's a situation where the creator and editorial that's where they fall down and fall apart. And that's kind of where, the pathology rears its ugly head subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
So, so with the whole notion of like this forced diversity, what's happening is that you still have the people up top are the same motherfuckers, right? And, and they see like, oh, women buy this stuff. Oh, black people buy this stuff.
Yep.
So we need to cater to them. You know what I mean?
That's what they did with Green Lantern. I mean, DC went so far as admitted that when they created John Stewart, he was created as the Black Green Lantern. That was it.
1972.
Yeah, and that was its initial thing. That was the initial thing, was like, we needed a black character, so we made a Black Green Lantern, because like that's a role that it's like a cop, like, he can go to other people.
Right, and that's the thing. And so, change never comes from the top down, it always comes from the bottom up. So it was like,
oh my God, can I just thank you for that statement? Because I've been preaching that same fucking thing for fucking years. And it's just everybody that always talks about like, oh, like we need these mass, like everybody that talks about like to go kind of to police brutality, like, oh, like the president needs to do. I'm like, the president doesn't control the police. Like, that's not how it works. You can't fix it from the top down. You have to start local. Like, you have to fix it here and then go up. Right. That's the same way. That's the same thing they did with marriage equality. Like 34 states had already legalized it, and then the president was like, all right, fuck it. Like,
right. And, luckily at that time we had a president that would be like, you know what? Right, I've changed my mind on that. Right. You know what I mean? So we'll deal with that. I mean, and that's the same thing with anything, right? That's the same thing with anything. It's like, you don't go to the mainstream in the beginning. The mainstream comes to you. And so, like, like for instance, we go back to the story of John Stewart. It was like, originally his name was supposed to be like Washington Freeman or some shit like that. And
Christ.
then and then Neil Adams was like, that's a slave name. And it was Neil Adams who made that comment, which changed, that character's name to John Stewart. And then later on, a couple decades later, it took the wherewithal of Bruce Timm, where he was like, yo, all right, we're doing the Justice League cartoon. We're going to have Green Lantern in there. Fuck, how about we bring John in there?
Yeah.
Right? And the thing about John, one of the reasons why John became the Green Lantern for a generation is because, he was also written like a man. He wasn't written like a black man. He wasn't written like a white person's approximation of a black man.
Yes.
He was written like a man.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
And it was Phil Lamar's, voice acting, which gave John Stewart resonance.
I love Phil Lamar, and like when I found out that he was John Stewart, I was like, oh shit, that makes me so happy, because I really like him.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same thing with Carl Lumbly being the voice of Martian Manhunter, that made everybody understand that Martian Manhunter was black. And that's a very interesting...
That's exactly I was about to say the same thing. It's always been very interesting to me that Martian Manhunter has always been portrayed as black. Except in the comics, his persona's white. But otherwise, since the 90s.
Yeah, again, because of, what's brought into the play. That goes a little bit side note into, like, voice acting in cartoons, right? And that's the thing. It's like, we know what's authentic, right? Our ears hear it. That's why in Thundercats, we always know that Panthro is black, because the voice of Panthro was Grandpa Huxtable. You know what I mean? And
I never watched that show. I never watched that show.
Watched the Thundercats? Yeah, the original Thundercats. Like,
that's interesting.
He was voiced by Grandpa Huxtable.
That's cool. That's very interesting.
That's why Panthro is black, right? That's why with like the new iterations of Thundercats, like I saw not the new one where it's like all cartoony and cutesy, but the other one where it was medieval and whatnot. And I saw that Panthro. I'm like, that ain't Panthro. That is not Panthro.
They didn't. They didn't put a black voice actor. Oh, that's stupid.
And even design wise, Panthro in the original Thundercats cartoon does have African features. He does. Like there are some things that
I'll be
are.
honest. I always just figured.
He was the black dude, right?
I see, like, I didn't know, but I just kind of always figured. So like to hear it, that is weird. That is weird because anthropomorphic series is very interesting to me. I was actually just reading an update on the SWAT Cats kind of Kickstarter that I was part of, and they're still trying to make that show happen. But I always thought that was an interesting show as well because they had different. It was effectively like a subversive way to have cultural like diversity in a show because they had all sorts of different cats. Like they had a variety of different cats, and it wasn't, you know, you could like they had different voices. They had like everything was diverse about it because it was cats. So like it's not, you know, it's like it was a very subversive way to do it. So anthropomorphized shows is very interesting to me. But then like this whole recent thing where you had all these white characters, white actors bouncing from shows that they were portraying people of color. I found it very strange, and I'll tell you why. My initial thought when I first was watching The Simpsons, before I knew anything about voice acting in general, I always saw Apu as an Indian man, and
Yeah.
I feel like I always knew that this was a humorous and exaggerated depiction of an Indian man.
Right.
But what it did is it made me interested in the culture. It made me interested in the religion was very interesting to me. I was very curious about it. So like I went on to do research and was more attracted to things like when Virgin Comics did its comic books that were based on Indian characters. Like I was super into that because that was it kind of built all on itself, and I was very interested in it. But I feel like that kind of all goes back to Apu. Like, and yeah, later I learned it was a white dude voicing him, but then yeah, culturally, obviously that brings in problems because he's doing a exaggerated, like, you know, spoof voice of an Indian man. So like then you're like when you watch him do it, like in an interview when he's doing it, you're just like, you feel like you shouldn't be doing that, man. like you shouldn't, like you're making fun of somebody right there. Like, and that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
And to see, but then to see this whole recent kind of move of Kristen Bell, she was leaving and she made this big stink about it, and it felt like yes, oh my god, yes, it felt like virtue signaling so hard because I was like, you're just falling on a sword that wasn't there. Like nobody was out here saying like, oh, this, you know, these characters on this cartoon show, because I've personally always felt that what you see is when you're a child, at least, is more resonating than what you hear as far as like how something sounds. You hear the sound of a cow. When you hear a cow in real life, they don't sound like the little machine that tells you how a cow sounds. Like, but you resolve that once you get older. So like, I thought it was weird, but then I recently, we actually talked about this on the last podcast, I recently found out that they wrote that role for her. Like the creator of the show was like, she was always going to be this character, and this character was always meant to be voiced by her. And then it goes back to what you said. You have the same people in charge. You know, this dude decided that he was going to write, but he was going to write a mixed race character that was always meant to be voiced by a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that in and of itself, if that was your intent, that is the problem. The problem began before she got the job.
Right. It's not Kristen Bell's problem. It's the person of her. You know, again, you know, not top down, bottom up, right? And so, like for instance, you know, going back, having this all tie into Comicsgate, right? You know, this is the 90s before social media, right? So you really did not have the opportunity to see how your quote unquote favorite creator was like behind closed doors, right?
That's true.
Although you know, I would, as an artist, I would argue where people were like, can you separate the art from the artist? I'm like, no, you can't, because in all honesty, as artists, when we are creating something, we are revealing a bit of our soul. So whatever work you see from
Fuck,
that
now
artist.
I can't listen to Chris Brown no more. Yeah, so you said that, and now I can't listen to Chris Brown no more.
I'm just that type of cat. There are certain artists, like from Jump, I was like, I had a problem with. Like, I had, well before I knew what a piece of trash he was, I had a problem with R. Kelly from Jump. Right?
Really?
Like, yeah, because I'm like, there was just something about that motherfucker. I was just like, like, I would hear some of the songs like, you remind me of your Jeep. Like, the fuck is that about? Like, I want to write what? Like
Fair.
He was telling, there was some stuff like he was telling on himself. Like the title of Aaliyah's first album, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number.
That whole thing was so weird, because I remember learning about that in the 90s, and I thought it was weird.
It was creepy then. So, like, the whole thing about comics, like, for instance, EVS, and how he has become the poster boy of this whole Comicsgate thing. It's like, if you really think about it, EVS draws like a fascist. Like, his stuff is, it's technically, I would say, it technically looks good. You've got all the hatching and the cross hatching and all that other shit, but it's stiff as a board. There's no life to it. There's no energy to it. There's no spark to it, right? It's technically beautiful, emotionally empty. But that's just me. But now with
you know what? I am the kind of person that I like consuming things where people go into like this kind of depth on how things are done. So like I listen to a podcast called Explain the X-Men. Fantastic podcast. They go in on like the social, the political, everything around the book, how it's written, the themes, everything. Like, I love it. When I read, don't go that deep into it. I personally feel like I don't have the necessary information to I hated doing book reports, like having to discern a theme of something that I'm reading. Like, if I don't get the point, like, then you didn't write it well enough. If I got to do research to figure it out, I feel like you didn't write it well enough. So like,
fuck that up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like, if I don't know what this was about, you did it wrong. So like, listening to a lot of this shit I'm very interested. Like, you saying that, like, now I'm looking at a piece from like Green Lantern Rebirth, because that's kind of like my only like litmus test for EVS is like, that's where I first experienced his art, and that's kind of the only thing I've ever read from him, like other Green Lantern stuff that he's done. And like, when you describe it that way, like, I see it, and I remember seeing. There was that moment where, I don't know if you've read Green Lantern Rebirth, but like, there's the moment where Ollie uses the ring just to generate one single arrow, and like, the words tell the story of like, it cost so much and it was so hard. And I feel like that was the only moment in that whole series where the art reflected it. Because everything else was like, even when they did that whole big, like, seven Green Lanterns or whatever defending against the entity, and they all kind of were badass. And I was like, it feels like Hollywood badass. It feels like this is the big moment. The camera pans out. Everything is bright and loud, but like, there's no meaning behind it. It is what has now been the big sky beam at the end of the movie, right? It's just this big thing. It's bright, it's loud, but it doesn't mean anything. And that's very interesting that you say that, because like, now I see it. I always thought it was strange that he became kind of the main dude. And I honestly think the only reason he did is because he made kind of a big stink when he left. Like, he made a big deal about him leaving. And then he was like, I'm doing Battletoad or whatever the fuck it's called, Cyberfrog again. It's the same fucking thing. Again. And yeah. He said, I'm going back to my original creator-owned work, Cyberfrog. And I read that and I was like, that piece of shit? That's what you're doing?
You like this? When I saw that dude like, okay, dog. See, the thing about EVS is that for a brief moment we were Facebook friends, and then I would pay attention to some of the shit that he was writing. This is well before Comicsgate.
Right.
I think this was a good, like, what, 8 years before Comicsgate.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, so he was a douche biscuit for a while.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he was just a dick for a while.
Right.
And and now, yeah, like he found his crew. See, that's another thing about, douche biscuits. And this is the reason why a lot of supervillain plans don't pan out, because they wind up fighting amongst each other. you know what I'm saying? Like assholes always want to be the biggest asshole, and when they're around another asshole, eventually those two assholes one of them will try and turn into a dick and try to fuck the other one. So so like his big meltdown was because he got kicked off of the mountain of assholes, right? And again with Comicsgate, I look at and I saw some bits of some of the books that they do. And their whole argument is that we just want to make comics fun again.
Right.
We want politics in our comics, which is ironic because every comic that they read in the 90s
was political.
You had some shady government agency that the group was either fighting against, or some shady government agency created the superhero, or some shady government agency assassinated.
Comics are an inherently political medium, and to say anything else is fucking idiotic.
Exactly. So, what they basically, these Comicsgaters want to do is they want to create 90s image comics again. And they have. And their books suck.
I'm sure they do.
For a large part.
Dude, I went through the list one day because I was like, all right, let me see what these books are. Like, what are they pitching? Like, and then I'm going through and I'm like, oh my god, it's the 90s again. Because you have shit that is literally described. One of them was, what if the like classic movie monsters were the X-Men? I was like, that's your pitch? That's the pitch. That's a terrible. First of all, you can't pitch by using another comic book's name.
As a matter of fact, that sounded like the pitch for Paramount's whole Dark Universe shit. Or Universal. That's exactly what that pitch was. And that's exactly why we don't have damn movies right now. What
pisses me off though, that the Dracula movie was good. It was a good fucking movie, and I was excited.
Actually, secretly, if they wanted to do Dark Universe,
they still could.
They did. There was the DNA there. Like you said, Dracula Untold could have been part of the DNA. If they
supposed to be.
The Mummy different. If they did the Mummy different, it could have been part of the DNA.
It still
if
could.
They did, right, like, because they started off with the remake of The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, who looks like a Wolfman in half transformation all day. I mean, they had... And this ties into Comicsgate, this also ties into their quote-unquote enemy, the SJW comics, which that they're bitching about DC and Marvel. This all ties in, right? It all boils down to intent.
Yes.
Okay? It all boils down to what are you intending to do with the material? Like, for example, the reason why Dark Universe failed, and Universal failed in that mold, is because literally they wanted to make Universal Monsters the X-Men.
Yeah.
They had no plan.
Yeah.
Other than making Universal Monsters the X-Men.
See DCEU. No plan.
Right.
Shit is in shambles.
Exactly. DCEU fell the shit apart because, they wanted to rush, the success that Marvel had. Marvel was smart. They built it up with the individual movies. DC could have actually done the opposite if they did it right. You could have started with Justice League and then done individual movies to like build it up. Which, if you see Wonder Woman, Shazam, and Aquaman, that, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is what the DCEU could have been, right? So, going into that, right, with Comicsgate, it's like their intention, you can see this, is not to make good material. Their intention is not to make characters that resonate, characters that last, because if you do that, that means you actually have to care about the story. That means that you actually have to put more into the story than what is, there on the surface, right? Again, a lot of these cats, who are Comicsgate fans, probably started reading comic books when they were 10, when they were 12, the Image era, right? The creators of it were the guys who were either making their biggest money during that time, you know what I mean, or just broke in around that time, right? Yep. So what they see is that their mode of storytelling is going the way of the dodo. And then instead of trying to actually create resonant material, right? Because apparently, I guess if you look at their books, they really don't have any deep thoughts, you know what I mean? Or don't want to make anything with commentary. So they're railing against, the whole thing of like, well, I'm being shut out because, last year I had 40 superheroes that look like me. This year I only have 39. And that's some bullshit, That's how they feel about it,
yeah.
Right? Business-wise, DC and Marvel fucked up the whole diversity thing because, again, you have this top-down sort of thought process where the top is like, oh, the world is diverse, so we should create characters that match that world.
Right.
Wait a minute. Creating a new character is going to cost us money because if that character takes off, we need to pay residuals to that creator. So fuck that. Let's just take a character from our
Does Marvel
IP.
really pay residuals?
Huh?
Does Marvel pay residuals?
Yeah, they have to. Actually, Jim Starlin was salty because he said he made more money off of Batman versus Superman, where they had his version of the KG Beast in there, than he did off of the Marvel movies where they used Thanos, because he created Thanos. Right?
I just bought the art book from what's
like for instance, like Marv Wolfman for years was fighting with Marvel to get some of that Blade money because he co-created Blade. You see what I'm saying?
Interesting.
So yeah, so it's like, that's the reason why DC and Marvel, people are like, DC and Marvel need to create new characters. They won't, and no, they do not. You know what I mean? They do not, because they have thousands and thousands of characters in their stable.
And I honestly don't think they. Well, I feel like DC does need to, because I feel like their catalog is far wider than Marvel's.
But again, the thing about DC, the thing that DC was riding on for so many years, once again, was their death row, Marvel Milestone Media. Right. And if they actually go to Milestone and develop those characters for other media, you gotta come up with that Skrilla.
Because you know what I mean? But like, you look at something, because guess what happened when they put Static on TV? It was like 4 fucking seasons. It was a successful ass TV show.
Exactly. It was extremely successful, and Milestone got some checks from that.
I would very much love to see like an Icon movie or show, even, because I feel like he's got more of a rich, diverse history. I feel like an Icon show would be very interesting.
Again, no, it would be successful. It would be very successful. But that, these are some of the reasons, like, for instance, everybody's talking about Milestone coming back, coming back. Why haven't they come back? Is because of that relationship, that distributor relationship, right? If Milestone was truly its own company, you know what I mean, not distributed through DC, Milestone arguably can come back, anytime that they wanted to, especially now that they've settled their issues with Dwayne McDuffie's widow. They can come back anytime that they want to. But because that they're distributed by DC, they are beholden to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers doesn't know what the fuck they have.
No,
You know what I mean?
They don't know what the fuck they're doing with anything. Look at
Right.
we did a whole podcast basically about the whole HBO Max versus DC Universe fight, because for some reason that's a fight, even though it's the same company.
Right. They could just fold that in. On the flip side, Disney is smart in the fact that Disney knows to leave well enough the fuck alone if it's working.
Yeah.
So like with Marvel, with definitely the Marvel, the MCU, Disney was like, with Iron Man, the event, y'all know what you're doing, y'all straight, do what you need to do, right? What's interesting
because that's a very interesting point, because Disney came in, they bought Marvel, and they were like, yeah, you guys are killing it, go on about your business.
Right, and the reason why they bought Marvel was just to shore up the young boys market, because they didn't have that, you know what I mean? Like Disney,
God, right.
Disney with the princesses. Disney had the princesses, right? So Disney had the girl market all locked down
for decades.
Disney, for decades. But Disney did not have the little boy market locked down at all.
They had Star Wars, but Star Wars audience is older by default.
Exactly. And what happened, and this is exactly what happened, okay? So 2008 was, in my opinion, that was the turn. Because 2008, 2 movies came out, Iron Man and The Dark Knight. And they really revolutionized the game. And what I said when that happened, I said, okay, number one, you are going to see a shitload more of screenwriters coming out with graphic novels. You know what I mean? To get their shit turned into movies.
Yep.
And then I said, number two, what you're going to see is you're actually going to see movie studios try to start graphic novel lines in order to build an audience for whatever crap movies that came out.
I.e. Netflix.
And you had a couple of experiments in that when that happened. You had crap movies like My Super Ex-Girlfriend, so on and so forth. Even Disney, for a hot second, Disney tried to come out with their own graphic novel line based on their rides. I know this because I had a friend who was working on that at the time. Yeah. So Pirates of the Caribbean comic, Return to Space Mountain comic, think along those lines. But with Disney, Disney did the move that I didn't think what would happen. I didn't think of that. Disney was like, well, fuck trying to develop our shit. There's Marvel. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let's play their shit. And here's the thing. Despite, what was his name? Ike
Perlmutter.
Yeah. Who, was again about that racist bullshit and whatnot.
About the racist bullshit, he was a problem.
He was what academically we would say is problematic. On the streets we would say he was on some bullshit.
Right.
But despite that, because Marvel, as we talked about with DC and Marvel, the thing that Marvel has baked into its DNA, as opposed to DC, is that DC may have the icons of the superheroic myth in their stable,
right?
But Marvel has the black superheroic icons.
100%. 100%. That's why I think the Marvel catalog is so much more diverse, and they know, especially in the films now, they know how to turn that into something. Iron Man, like realist talk, Iron Man was not the most popular character when they decided we're going to do an Iron Man movie, but they fucking knocked it out the park.
Yeah, they did, because they were smart about it, because after they went bankrupt in the 90s, right? That's when they started, selling the rights to characters to Sony and Fox and yada, yada, yada. Again, as we all know, and I say as we all know because everybody now admits it, is that, Blade was the template for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh my God, it was. I loved Blade.
Blade is the template for the MCU.
I wish Wesley hadn't lost his shit on that third one, because.
But you know what? I'll say this at the same time on that third movie, like looking at it again, I can see why Wesley lost his shit. You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's the thing: the lot of it's so weird. There's actually scenes where you can see in the movie that made the final cut where his stunt double was in place because he just wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
he wouldn't get out of the trailer.
No, that beef between him and Goyer was real. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
But regardless of that, it was like even with the Sony movies and the Fox movies, like the early days of the Marvel movies, you know what I'm saying, was super hit or miss, right? Extremely super hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like the only good thing about the Daredevil movie is Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin. Literally, that's the only good thing about that movie.
He did wreck that role.
You're right. He was the only good part of that movie, right?
Yeah, it's actually very funny. I watched the like extended cut of Elektra, which has the dream sequence she has. The dream sequence she has actually ties back into it, like has his cameo in it. It has Affleck's cameo. And I was like, oh, okay, well, so now I know this happens in that same universe, because otherwise you have no fucking clue. Like, this isn't related. It claims to be.
Right. Like, when Marvel did their own studios, and it took those movies for them, it took those movies being successful for them to go ahead and do Iron Man. And, what's interesting about that is, like, Iron Man, the movie in 2008, kind of serves the same function that Amazing Fantasy 15 does for Marvel Comics, period.
Yeah.
Because Amazing Fantasy 15 was the first appearance of Spider-Man.
Yep. Which
set this whole motherfucker off into motion. Iron Man plays that same role in the MCU. You know what I mean? Because people were tired of Spider-Man movies and stuff like that. X-Men movies collectively are trash, with the exception of Logan, you know what I mean, and Deadpool, 1 and 2. Sorry.
I mean, here's the thing. I think X2 is really good. I think X2 was a really good movie. I think I actually liked X3 because it got a little more ridiculous. It got a little more comic booky. They did in that movie, sadly, what DC did in a lot of their animated movies recently, which is take like 2 to 5 different storylines and just jamming them together, and that shit doesn't work.
Poorly. So side note, X franchise, there are only a couple decent movies. Like, I will give it, X2 was decent. I will definitely give that to you, right?
Logan is incredible. There's no question about that.
Logan is the high water mark. Logan was like the X-Men movie I waited all these goddamn other movies to see. Like, that was that was the X-Men movie I waited to see. Of course, Deadpool 1 and 2, and I don't even like Deadpool as a character, but the movie in the comics, but the movies, I'm like, I get it. You know what I mean? I get who Deadpool is, right? I even liked X-Men First Class because it was doing a reboot of it, but in general, those X movies are trash.
They're always lacking. They're always lacking follow through. It's whatever they bring up. You bring the Apocalypse in, but it's like kind of like he's there and he's badass, but like so much.
The reason why it doesn't have the follow through is because, and Olivia Munn has said this in interviews, it's like none of the filmmakers were at the X-Men comics.
That's why I like X3 the most, because Ratner, for all his fucking, like buffoonery, he read that shit and he put in some really key, interesting moments. But again, it was along this line of shit that just like none of it made sense.
Make the Dark Phoenix saga the B story of a movie.
Yeah. But it was just like he took these key moments, like the Cure storyline was I think Joss Whedon's probably best work in comics, personally. The Cure storyline, which was in the Astonishing X books in the first few issues, like with
but that was wasn't Wasn't that after X3?
No, because
You
they had
talking about Astonishing X-Men?
Yeah, they had Dr. Kavita Rao in the
Astonishing
movie.
X-Men
1 through
with John Cassidy drawing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Astonishing X-Men was a long time ago. It was a long time ago, but it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, how fast they go.
But that's the thing.
Had my first old moment.
Well, no, it's just like it seems like it's more recent because it's better than what you remember like the early 2000s to have been. Like you had that little bit of early 2000s that was really good with sadly not Claremont. I like the Claremont stuff. I now realize a lot of it was callback, like the Revolution X-Men line when they like redesigned everybody. Yeah. A lot of it was callback, and I didn't know that. But then, like when Millar took over, that was good, but it was short-lived. And then apparently, the most hated fucking run in X-Men history, from what I've seen on the internet, is Chuck Austen. And then after that is when you had the Astonishing book, but that was all like by 2005. And
so wait, because that was
because let me see, I think it was Astonishing.
Wait, you talk about the Miller run, or you talk about the Morrison run?
I'm sorry, Morrison.
Yeah, the Morrison run.
Yeah, with Frank Quitely and all that stuff. Because the Astonishing X-Men book came 2004. Astonishing X-Men #1 is 2004.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. They brought in Kavita Rao. They brought in that Cure story, and it was a good story in the comic. But then they just kind of did this thing, and then to bring Beast, who I think. The Beast that they portrayed at the beginning of the movie is the Beast that was already fine with who he was. So to have him have these moments of like, Cure, I could look normal again. He's a grown ass man now. Like he's been doing shit. He got over this a long time ago.
You've been blue for 35 years. Like now you like, come on, man.
No, that's what bothered me about that is like
so blue. So it's not like
right. It was very much like you had these like gems. And like the Callisto Storm fight, like that is an important thing, but it is an important thing on its own.
Exactly. And that's, and speaking to that and speaking how Disney, in spite of itself, corrected itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because of the nature, the MCU, because of the nature of the MCU, how it corrected itself, right? From jump, with Iron Man, we got Rhodey Rhodes. I mean, really, when the Stinger, when we see Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, I know collectively.
There's another version of that.
Do you
know there's another version of that?
No.
There's another version of that scene with a completely different dialogue. Because they had initially planned to buy everything back. So that scene where he says, he's like, you don't know. Basically, he was like, you don't know anything about radioactive spiders and mutants, and like he lists all this shit that they couldn't list, so that they redid it.
So he's like, the Avengers Initiative. But
yeah, but I shit myself when I saw that. Like Sam Jackson coming through, I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Like that's a perfect casting.
So cinematically, the MCU always was on point with bringing in the breadth of characters and the diversity of characters organically, right? Before people were again taking notice about diversity being a big thing, this was organically being brought in.
Yeah.
On the flip side, what I'd like to call the DCW, they call it the Arrowverse, I call it the DCW. They were also brilliant in terms of diversity naturally happening on those shows, straight from jump, from Arrow, you know what I mean? From Arrow to Flash. And honestly, according to Dwayne McDuffie's rule of 3, before Black Lightning, the Flash was the blackest show in the Arrowverse because you had Iris, you got Joe, you know what I'm saying? Then you had Wally come in, and then we got Joe's wife in there.
I thought it was very interesting. So I remember the argument back when they made Fantastic Four's Johnny Storm black, and they made that whole family black, and except for some reason Sue Storm's not black, and I was like, all right, so either he's adopted or she's adopted. Like before the movie came out, like we had all these theories, but then you had people being like, oh, but it doesn't make sense. Johnny Storm's white. I'm like, yeah, but nothing about Johnny Storm requires him to be white. Like nothing about him. So like for me, I have no problem with changing characters like that because nothing defines. Like Bruce Wayne would have a very different story if he was black. Right. So Bruce Wayne can't be black. Batman can be black all day long. I don't give a shit. You can give me a good black Batman. I'd love it. I think it'd be fucking fantastic.
Nighthawk movie. I would say if Bruce Wayne was black, he'd be Nighthawk. You know,
right? Exactly. And the same thing with like you look at Miles versus Peter. Peter Parker needs to be white. He grew up in suburban New York in a time when if you were a black smart kid, it would have been a different life.
Right.
You got to tell the story differently. Like you can't, and if you don't, you're ignoring that part of it. If you're gonna change shit and like Sue Storm, like none of that, they were just smart. They were smart people. That's all. Like they could all be black. The entire Fantastic Four can be black. Like there's nothing about them that requires them to be white. That's it. They're all just smart and curious.
Except for with the exception of history, right?
Right.
And when it comes to the quote unquote whitewashing of characters, it also depends. What I've seen is that it depends on the popularity of the character.
Right.
Right. So, for example, people were up in arms of Michael B. Jordan playing Johnny Storm. But in all honesty, in all of comic fandom, how many cats have you ever heard them say like, yo, Johnny Storm, that's my favorite fucking character
Zero.
of all time?
Zero.
Yo, you know
Not
what I'm saying?
a one, and I know some nerds.
Solitary person. And that movie sucked not because Michael B. Jordan was black. It was because Josh Trank made a suck-ass movie.
It was also that, but it was also the fact that the studio took over. And you can literally, I don't know if you watched it, which anyone that hasn't shouldn't.
I saw it once.
Yeah, me too. We saw it once. It was the closest I ever got to walking out of a theater. But I was just like, I'm a completionist, so I had to see the whole thing. But you could see where the studio takes over because it says 1 year later, and then the costumes are like the behavior is different. The hair is longer. Like shit is just like Johnny Storm is all of a sudden like a company man, like working with the government, like he was a rebel 3 scenes ago. Like,
yeah, I saw that movie on HBO, and I almost walked out of the theater. That's
he just leaves the house, leaves the TV running. Like, fuck it, I can't even do it. Can't even do it.
Yeah. I can't.
It was, and it's funny because like, and you see, and that really goes into like performative bullshit and virtue signaling. Josh Trank came out with a movie this year, Capone, I think, with the guy that played Venom, and it's been 4 fucking years since Fantastic Four came out. But now all of a sudden Josh Trank is vocal about, oh, like I really wanted Sue Storm to be black, and like I can't believe they didn't let me make her black, and like all this shit he would have done. I was like,
whatever, dog.
It's been 4 fucking years, but now you have a new movie out, therefore you got some shit to say. Fuck out of here.
And yeah, and you see, I'm gonna both sides this shit. You see the performative on both ends of the spectrum. You see the performative with the comic skaters. You see the performative with the people who declare themselves social justice warriors, so on and so forth. It's, again, it all boils down to intent of your subject, the intent of why you're making this thing, and also the authenticity in creating the subject matter.
Right.
Right? Like, at the end of the day, people can smell what's authentic and what's, not authentic.
Like you said earlier.
And,
yeah.
Right. And also, this kind of ties into, the subculture of comics that I'm in, which is the Black comics movement, so on and so forth. Right. We have, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of amazing books coming out of the Black comics movement, like just amazing shit. You know what I'm saying? Great stuff. Crescent City Monsters, Tuskegee Heirs, shit like Bitterroot.
Marcus just started. I don't know if how many, or rather, not just started, but I just recently saw that Marcus, who does Tuskegee Airs, he did a series of art that was Wakanda crossed over with Zamunda, and it was like the purest joy I ever felt looking at it, because I fucking I love Coming to America. So like to see both of those things, I was like, fuck, that's amazing. Like.
And that's, and that stuff is cool. Like, with the Black comics movement, seeing more Latino creators come out there, so on, doing these stories, they're all fine and good. At the same time, we kind of learned this in the late 90s, early 2000s. This Black comics game is like, just because the character is Black don't mean that the book is good. Yes. Or just because that creators are Black don't mean that the book is good.
Right.
And the best books coming out of Black comics are those books that have intention, that have deeper meaning, that have resonance behind it. You know what I'm saying? Like, Bitter Root works because that shit is good. It's just a good fucking story. Like Crescent City Monsters is just a great fucking story, with great art. Tuskegee Airs, it's a great story. Like, it's all about, and also the thing about those books is that they're also diverse in content. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not everybody is doing superheroes. You know what I mean? Not every book has to be Afrofuturistic, even though that is the realm that I am firmly placed in because of the Horseman, which is fine. You know what I mean? Which is fine. That was my intention.
Right.
Right. With my books and whatnot. But yeah, definitely. In terms of books with resonance, it's got to be more than the surface. Like most '90s comics. Not just from Image, but also from DC and Marvel. Like most of those early '90 books were trash. They were empty. They were devoid of substance. They were all for money grabs, right? And so the comic gators are trying to defend that money grab era, or they're trying to get back to that money grab era.
Right.
And they're also pissed at the fact that they got competition. And the thing about it is that they have competition from Black creators, from Latin creators, from Asian creators, from women creators, from transgender creators, so on and so forth. And on top of that, in all honesty, these Comicsgate cats, their material does not appeal to these different majority audiences.
Right.
And the audience that they do appeal to may have more disposable income, but it is a shrinking audience.
Right.
And that is why they are losing their shit. Like, they are losing their shit because, point blank, period, they are not on the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, if their books disappear tomorrow, nobody would give a fuck about that.
It's very true. It's very true. What I've found the most interesting is seeing people of color in the Comicsgate conversation. So I like got hyped to this whole thing through, there was a post on one of the collector groups, and they had like screenshotted a tweet, and it was Mike S. Miller. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
Mike S. Miller had gotten like kicked out of the DuPage, or not the DuPage, in Michigan, North Grand Rapids Comic Con. He had gotten kicked out of Grand Rapids Comic Con, and somebody said, "Good, he's like a piece of shit or a monster," or like they had said like this really like aggressive thing. I was like, Jesus, like that's a
like, goddamn.
That's a like, all right, let me see who this dude is. Like, what the fuck did he do? And then I look it up, and from what I could tell, he's just like an indie creator. And so he was doing these live streams, and so I jumped on. I'm watching, and I asked questions. I was like, why? Like, what is the big deal? Like, what is the whole like situation? What is the point? What is the like? Why are you making this a thing? Like, if you want to make indie comics, why can't you just make indie comics? Like, this is, at that time it was 2018. I was like, it's 2018. Like the internet has been around for a decade now, strong, for a wide like audience, you could just make comics and sell them online to the people that like your shit. Like you don't have to work at Marvel. So like making a big deal. Oh, like, well, I don't know. I don't like how they want me to, draw or write or whatever, Captain America or whoever. Make your own. Like that's the freedom we have. And I just didn't understand. And they're like, oh, but they're doing this, this forced diversity. And then they're, changing who these characters are and this, that, and the other thing. And what it really ended up feeling to me was that they're just stuck on this one representation of who this character is. And it goes into, it's something I've seen in a lot of different places where there was a recent example, Tracy, I forget his last name from 30 Rock. Tracy Morgan. Thank you. Tracy Morgan had tweeted something that like did not align with what his character on 30 Rock like behaves like or would say. So all these people that are 30 Rock fans, all these white people, realistically, I think from what I can tell, most people who watch 30 Rock are white people, had seen his tweet and were like, why would you say such a thing? Like they were just like blown away. And they were like appalled. I'm like, but he's a person. He gets to have his own feeling. He's not this character.
That's Tracy Morgan too. It's
right.
like really don't know who Tracy Morgan is.
Exactly.
If you first experienced Tracy Morgan at 30 Rock, you do not know who Tracy is at all.
Right. Exactly. So like people are looking at and like they box these characters in, comics. They're like Captain America is this white dude who does this kind of thing, and in smaller levels, this has happened anytime that Marvel or DC has done like a little something to the side and done something different with a character. They get mad because this isn't the character I like. This isn't the character. So then,
again, that ties back into societal issues where we started in the beginning. That ties into the pathology, right? Like think about it like this, okay? All right, I'm just gonna say it. It seems as if the person who identifies as white cannot empathize with any other culture or identify with any other culture that is not what has been labeled as white, right? On the flip side, every other, again, people of color have been trained, some might say forced, to identify with people that don't look like them.
Yeah.
Right? If we look in our, if we classically look at our media, we've been forced to identify with like people like John Wayne or Sylvester Stallone, so on and so forth. And now that we don't have to rely on that representation, you know what I mean? That we do have our own heroes, and we've always had our own heroes. We've always had our own idols. We've always had our own icons to look up to. But this is the first time that those who identify as white are forced to see examples or identify with people that don't look like them, or look at people who don't look like them as the hero, and their minds are short-circuiting.
Right.
Yeah, because of the fact that they, and I'm sure when you put this podcast out, people are going to be like, how dare you say that? And I'm like, prove me wrong.
No, it's 100% true. It's 100% true because you have, and this is actually, there's a great example of this because Brian Michael Bendis, people don't like a lot of his writing, which is fine, whatever, but like he created Miles Morales. He created Miles Morales because he adopted a little black boy. And he said, I thought it was ridiculous. I'm paraphrasing here, but he said basically something along the lines of, I found it ridiculous that he had no character that I was writing that looked like him and that he could relate to directly. And people are, like the exact point you said, people have brought that up before. They're like, oh, well, like, black people read Spider-Man and they associate to Spider-Man and Superman and all these other characters. I'm like, right. But there is something fundamentally different about seeing someone who looks just like you be the hero, be the good guy, be like, because let's spade a spade, we've painted black people as the criminals in this country through media for 40 years.
More than 40.
I just mean like it's in popular media, like when you have black characters,
Right.
a lot of times they're in jail, they're drug dealers. Yeah.
You will put this in.
Yeah, in our lifetimes. Like for like the 36 years that I've been alive, black heroes in a situation that it wasn't a black show or a black network. Like I loved UPN. I'm like I grew up on that shit. Like it just wasn't there. When black people show up, they are the criminal. They are under investigation. They are suspected, even if they turn out to not have done it. You know, the whole episode or the whole movie, they're under suspicion and they are treated as a criminal. And even if the point is, oh, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover kind of thing, you've just spent this whole movie judging a book by its cover.
Judging that book.
Yeah. And so to have someone that looks exactly like you, like I don't read, like, let me rephrase that. I haven't read a lot of Valiant books. I read the first volume of EXO, it was really good. But me seeing the character of Faith, who is a fat woman, as a superhero, I felt a type of way. I'm a fat dude. And seeing that, it felt a type of way. Like, now, do I want a shit ton of fat superheroes? No, because I think it's not practical. If you have physical powers, I think you're going to lose weight, like even if you are fat. But like if you have mental abilities, like I know if I had telepathy and telekinesis, I probably would gain weight because I'd do a lot less shit. I'd fly around instead of walking, you know, like if I could do it, you know, I'm kind of lazy sometimes. So like, so I feel like a person has like, that kind of power could stay fat, and that makes sense to me. So like, but you still get a different feeling about it. You still get a different feeling about it.
Like Thor or like thick, you know, I want to call thick Thor in Endgame and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like I loved like when the final battle came.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he wasn't svelte Thor anymore. He still had the gut, and he was like, but he was ready to do this, and I was like, hell yeah, like
that's what's up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Bro, you know what I'm saying? And that's the whole point of it. It's like anybody can be a hero. So why are you trying to shit on people who want to see heroes that look like them? The world does not revolve around you, you know? Even with the books that, you know, with the books that I make, right? You know, I love the worlds that I've created. You know, I would love for as many people as possible to read my work, but at the same time, I know that I'm one of many, right? And not everybody's gonna read my shit. And that's fine. I'm not upset by that.
Because you're a grown man and you're an adult, you can have these thoughts like independent of just like what's in it for me. Right.
Like I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I want to get paid. Don't get me wrong, I want to, you know, expand my IP. But at the same time, I do understand, like, this is my point of view. And I'm sharing my point of view. And I'm not trying to force my point of view on anyone. Right? I hope that enough people like my point of view that they keep buying my books.
Right.
And things of that nature. Right? And I do know that as a black man of Liberian and of African American descent, I have a certain viewpoint. I look at the world a certain way. I depict that world in a certain way. But my depiction of it is not the end-all, be-all definition of blackness, for example. Right? There are plenty of other images and depictions and viewpoints that we need to see and hear, because that's what diversity is all about.
Right.
Right? At the same time, we need to see more Latino voices, you know, creating work with intention. You know what I mean? We need to see more different types of voices creating work of intention, which is not just, you like read my shit because I'm a Latin writer or a Latin creator, or read my shit because,
Right.
I'm a transsexual creator. No, it's like read my shit because it's good. My viewpoint is going to help inform this story, give it more breadth and depth and weight, you know what I mean,
Right.
and resonance, right? Hopefully to it, you know. But it's like, no, I'm not gonna shit on, other people's depictions. Like, with all these people, Comicsgate talk about, oh, it's forced diversity, we're being threatened, blah blah blah. Get the fuck out of here. It's like Captain America is still Steve Rogers. Batman is still Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? Superman is still Clark Kent, right?
Although I really, really want a Val Zod like animated series, or because that shit was like Earth 2 was fucking great.
Earth 2 was a very fascinating experiment. That was a fascinating story experiment. I think Earth 2 was one of those books that I was like, this is interesting.
Because they pushed kind of every envelope. They were like, all right, Green Lantern's gay, and Hawkwoman's white or black rather, and like.
And the thing about my issue with Green Lantern being gay, I said this on another panel. It was like he was kind of being gay for pay, in a sense. It
really was. It was incidental.
It was
because nothing about him being gay was story driving. It was like the thing that happened at the beginning. He was being proposed to or proposing or whatever, and then his man dies, and then he at some point comes back as a entity. And I'm like, well, that's nothing about like. It was very brief, and it was kind of like the lightest way to do that without having to deal with it.
Exactly. But with that being said, I mean, just the story itself was intriguing. You know what I mean?
I like the idea of Helena coming back and becoming Batman, to like being a female Batman, to like maintain the message and the concept of it, and then finally like coming out as a Batwoman. Like it was just very, very interesting. Like I'm a big fan of it.
It was interesting. Like I would say honestly, Earth 2 was kind of like, it felt like the Wildstorm version of the DC universe.
Yes. That's a great dude. I love the Wildstorm universe. I hated what they did with like integrating the New 52 shit. I didn't like the Stormwatch book was the only book that was decent, and even then, because it was kind of like beholden to there's a Justice League and all this other shit, it didn't really feel right.
Warren Ellis hopped on and slowly transformed the Stormwatch into the Authority. That was dope.
That was perfect.
Good. But definitely, Earth 2 was like the Wildstorm DCU. Like even with the whole notion of like the world coming to the end and finding a new world, how they ended the Wildstorm universe. That was kind of like like the same.
It was kind of the shittiest crossover, which was was it Continuum or whatever the hell it's called?
Like
whatever with that giant Brainiac robot, where they brought in all the whatever Convergence. That's the one. Bullshit. Convergence was so shitty, but like if you just treat it as a plot device to get you to the next volume of Earth 2, like it's not that bad. It was just like a big long ass plot device.
Woo, that was trash. Woo.
God, it was so bad. I was just like, everybody just wanted to write these like golden eras of DC without having to just write an independent book.
Right. And actually, when you boil it down to when you boil it all down, it's actually the biggest problem right now that people are lamenting about the corporate 2, as I like to call them. They want to blame it on diversity. They want to blame it on this. They want to blame it on that. But the fact of the matter is that I call them the corporate 2 for a reason now. They are part of larger corporate entities, which are Warner Brothers and Disney.
They're there to make money.
They are there. They are literally there to make money. And on top of that, being the corporate too, they have enough intellectual property to exploit in different media from now till Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to be honest with you, the best storytelling that's Marvel based has been the films. It hasn't been the comic book.
Wow.
It hasn't been the comic books for a minute.
Are you
right?
not reading Dawn of X?
I actually I read Dawn of X and I read Powers of X, and those two books were so brilliant. I said that after reading those two series, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to read X-Men again for another 10 years, because what happened was with those teams, you know, with Hickman and Pepe Larraz and
Yeah.
uh,
House of X and Powers of X was a brilliantly executed relaunch.
that whole crew gave me straight up Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Terry Austin, Tom Oreshowski, Glennis Oliver vibes. Like, that gave me the vibe of when the X-Men became the X-Men.
Yeah.
And I knew that after I read those two series, I am not going to feel that vibe from X-Men books for a while. So, you know,
I'll be honest with you though, the books themselves, they're all still under that. Like, it's still continuing that whole storyline. It's still continuing everything.
I totally get that. And I totally understand that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that where the books have gone right now are trash at all, simply because of the fact I haven't read them. So, yeah, I'm not going to say shit.
Sure.
I'm not going to say shit about anything that I don't know about, right? But what I do know is that in terms of just that burst of true creativity, of truly taking that concept, flipping it on its ear, and taking it to the next level, I knew that that was a lightning in the bottle that we will not see on a consistent basis in the corporate too for a long time.
I'll be honest with you though, you're 100% right as far as the corporation aspect of it. I see it happening. I just read X Factor #1. So they launched a new X Factor book. It, like I said, it's all still set. It's on Coca-Cola. It's all still following that storyline. It's still, Hickman is still piloting the ship, right? But you can see that there is that corporate arm reaching down and saying, hey, we need another X book. Hey, we need another X book. Because what happened was we had Fallen Angels, which was very interesting, but it had Laura, X-23, in there. But then when she shows up in an issue of X-Men, she's like, I'm going by Wolverine. And Logan's like, that's what's up. Kind of like, we're going to share the name, no big deal. But then they send her into this thing where she disappears for a while. What's happened is that there is a great, grander story. Like, I can see it. But I can also see the corporate arm saying, yo, we need another X book. We need, like, pipe more money out this. Like, pull more money out of this. So then some of these books are happening before other books. Like, X Factor, the way I'm reading it, is happening right before all these other books, because they're, like, setting the rules for the resurrection process. Spoiler warning if you haven't read The House of X. Yeah, the Resurrection Protocol. They are setting the Resurrection Protocol during the X-Force book, like because Aurora dies at the beginning, and Northstar shows up and he's like, "Yo, bring my sister back. She's dead." And they're like, "Well, you need to, like, kind of prove that she's dead, because you know we're like setting up these rules, because otherwise we're just gonna be bringing back people that are alive." And then so, like, to me, I was like, wait, I read all these rules in House of X, like all this already happened. Like, so to me, I'm like, oh, this happens beforehand, because then we're setting up things. Like, he's playing like a weird, like, dislocated Jenga, because I'm betting corporate is like, hey, put out another X book because they're selling. Put out another X book because like they also put out Hellions, which is kind of weird. It's a weird book, but like they're putting out all these books to just, like, hit all the things that people want to see, but at the same time, like, none of it's lining up exactly right.
You know, and that's and that's exactly what's happening right now. And so, you know, with comics, especially in the US, where people, you know, they think comic books are pretty much either DC or Marvel, and that's where their endpoint of what comic books are. They're seeing this stuff and they're like, oh, the industry's going to shit. Oh, the industry's dying. Oh, the industry's doing this, and the third. Again, from the business standpoint of it, if you look at comics as an art form, the art form of comics is just it's growing exponentially.
It's flourishing. I think it's in the best position it's been ever.
It's literally flourishing, and it's the reason why it's flourishing is because those gatekeepers are irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like quite simply, it's quite simply this, right? And this is the same thing Dennis Cohen told me in 1994 when I first started trying to break into the industry, and the first place I went to was Milestone.
Mm.
He looked at my portfolio, and in the beginning I had some Batman pages, and then I had some Icon pages, and then I had some Black Panther pages, and then the last 3 pages were my own stuff. He looked at the portfolio, concentrated on those last 3 pages, and he was like, you want to make your own comics, don't you? Now, in my mind, I was like, how the fuck are you going to look into my soul like that? But, and I was like, yeah, I do, but, I feel like I have to work for the big 2 before I get enough chops to do my own thing. And he was like, no, if you want to make comics, just make comics. And this is well before, this is 94. This is before the internet becomes a thing. This is before print on demand. This is before Kickstarter. This is before all of that. Right? But, he was like straight up, he's like, if you want to make comics, make comics. It's like, now, if you want to work for us, these are the things that you need to work on, this, that, and the third. He told me what I needed to work on, gave me his card, so on and so forth. So, so I had cats from Milestone mentoring me, right?
Right.
I had the creators of Tribe, they mentored me, those sorts of things. But, he was right. My whole goal in this game was to make my own comics. And, at a certain point after doing an independent title, which we're re-releasing this month because it's time for it. And if we want to talk about
re-releasing, what you mean re-releasing?
The re-releasing of this is your podcast. People will know about it, so we're gonna catch heat for this too. That's cool. We're re-releasing Jigaboo Devil, The Devil's Due.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I saw the post about that.
This was actually the book that began my career. And I started off my career working on an extremely radical book. A book whose title alone, gets people all riled up and people feeling righteous. It's like, how dare you?
There's feelings about that word.
Jigaboo Devil. And then I'm like, how dare you listen to NWA's Fuck the Police? It's the same motherfucking thing. you know what I mean? It's the same motherfucking thing. It's the same discourse, you know what I mean? It's about revolution. It's black nationalist as hell, you know what I mean? But the title, it's funny, the title scares people, and the title wants people to virtue signal and all that shit and talk about how righteous they are, and they never have cracked open the book at all, right? But they think that they know what it's all about,
right?
And going back to what Dennis Cohen said to me, the beautiful thing about owning your own comic book company is you can put out whatever the fuck you want. you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it's straight up a situation where and this is sort of like, a response to the comic book haters and the creators and the fans and everybody that wants to virtue signal and talk about like how you can't do a thing. Like when it comes to my company, I'm Ozymandias with this shit. It's like, I'll tell you that I've done this shit 30 minutes after I've done it. So, when people are like, you should change the name, I'm like, nope, the name's been around since 1996, so that shit ain't changing.
Right.
Next. you act as if you have a say in what I do.
That's
I,
exactly this. Honestly, that's exactly why I chose a long time ago. Like when it is time for my book to come out, it's going to come out on my time and on my dime. Because if I go to Image, I read their whole submission guidelines, their whole shit, and it was basically they have the right to tell you to rename a book. And I was like, I'm pretty set on how this is gonna go. Like, this is how it's gonna go. So for me to like basically come in for you just to like finish it off for me, you know, put the bow on it, and then you're gonna be like, I don't like this box. It's already in the box. Like,
yeah, the box is already done. And when I say that, and especially with JBD, when I say things like that, again, the person who does not know my career or the person who wants to make some clout points, they'll say, well, you're this and that doing Jigaboo Double. It's like, but you don't know the intention of the shit that I do. And if you read my other work, you would know that I don't fuck around
right
with this.
What's funny,
right?
So I read the first Horseman volume 14 years ago at this point, a long fucking time ago. When we first met, I was at the Illinois Institute of Art in Schaumburg, which they're tearing down that building, which I think is funny.
Yeah. I read. Yeah.
And that's when I read it. I was introduced to you through my girlfriend at the time, my ex, who had been one of your students, and I thought it was just kind of like a whole, like very serendipitous situation where like I'm a big fan of comic books, I'm a big fan of indie comic books. So she was like, "Oh, one of my teachers made a comic book," and my initial thought was just like, "Oh, people make comic books." Like, and then she told me about it, and I was like, "Yo, that sounds really dope. Like, I'm really interested." And what's funny is I read it back then. I have it still. It's upstairs and it's in bagged and boarded and I got the signature back then, and I got them kept. They're close to my heart. When I read them, I don't think I was mentally like capable of really fully realizing them. I think back and I remember my reaction being like, it felt incomplete. It felt like I didn't know enough. And it was one of those things where like I reread it once and I still didn't get it. And to be very honest and very frank, I haven't touched them since. You recently sold on a big special fucking awesome deal through Drive-Thru Comics, like the whole collection. I picked that up. And I'm going to be working through that very shortly. But like, I wanted to read it, and I wanted to read it with my mind today and my mentality today. Cause like, I remember I've watched certain things. I remember watching certain movies and seeing certain things happen from, my mind when it was then. And I remember not understanding shit. I remember watching shit and not getting it. Just like my head not being there. Now people talk about this movie a lot. Oh my God, I can't remember the name. Marlon Wayans was in it. It's a movie about drugs.
Requiem of a Dream.
Thank you. Yes. It's like I knew you were gonna know because like it's very like people talk about that movie a lot because it resonates with people. And literally the one time I tried watching it, I passed out. Like my head wasn't there. I must have been tired. I just wasn't there. So it's something that like I know that going back to it, I'm going to be looking at it with essentially fresh eyes because I don't know what's like I didn't know enough then. So now I'm very like I'm excited now. I actually have them all downloaded on my computer. I'm ready to read them. So like I'm going to be reading them kind of all as one, which to me like also like kind of works into my completionist because I love reading the whole thing. So like as much of a story as exists, I want to read it. So I'm just super excited to just like read that whole thing. But it's a very interesting thing, like to see that you're bringing back this thing from the 90s. That I mean, I'll be honest. When I saw the title, and I know you, like I mean, I don't know you, but like I know you pretty well to be like, I don't think this man's a fucking asshole for naming this. So like I read it, but even knowing you, I was like, okay, that's a okay. Like that's a word. Like I don't even know if I could say that word. Like so, it's like I don't even know if it would be appropriate for me to talk about this book. So like
that's why I call him JBD. You know, that's why, you know. And I didn't create the character, but I do feel very much a kinship with the character. And
oh, interesting. What do you, so like we work with somebody else or?
The creator and the writer of the book is Lamorris Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah, he's, like I said, it was my first work. He was the first cat that gave me a gig working on JBD. And that's where I worked out all, you know, like the majority of my storytelling kinks and whatnot. And, you know, even in the discussion of, you know, the character's name, Jigaboo Devil, you know, we also refer to him as JBD for people who, just like NWA, you know what I mean?
That's fair. That's fair.
Right. Because nobody wants to say the full name of NWA. That's why we call him NWA.
Right.
It's the same thing with JBD, you know. But yeah, it's like you know, this is I was actually rereading that stuff again, the material again, as I was, you know, working on the package, whatnot, and you know, I called up Lamorris and I told him like, "Yo, dude, this stuff is timeless, right?" People were. It's interesting because people were offended / scared by the name in '96. You know what I mean?
Right.
Really in '96. And the book really didn't go anywhere because of that fear, right? And even, you know, when I decided to take it under the Griot stable, I really didn't promote that project because, again, of the quote-unquote fear, you know? It was like, at that point, you know, I became Mr., you know, the Horseman, and it's like, okay, he's Mr. Afrofuturism, and, you know, this kind of thing. It's like, all right, cool, you know? But especially with the George Floyd case, especially with what's happening now with Black Lives Matter, especially, you know, the whole notion of you have to make your voice heard. JBD is that voice. I mean, the Horseman is my voice as well, but JBD is that angry, incendiary, revolutionary book that needs to be out there and needs to be read. And we do go places that a lot of these cats who consider themselves very righteous and conscious, we go to those places that they don't go in this story, right? You know, we deal with you know, the realized fantasy of having an independent Black nation within the United States. You know, it's a story that is like the dream of the Black nationalist, but it is also showing how the sausage was made in that dream and how that dream can be very precarious and how it could be taken away if you don't fight to protect it. Right?
Right.
So that's what, you know, that's what JBD is all about. I appreciate you know, when you talk about the Horseman, you said you read it, you know, you didn't quite get it, you read it again.
Yeah.
You know, and you feel like it's, you know,
I know there's more to it. Like it's one of those things where like I'm reading, I know there's more to it. So I know that my first read and my first impression is not going to be, it's not going to be sufficient realistically. Like it's just not, I've read other books that I know have meaning, and I look at it and I'm like, I'm seeing the surface. I'm like, I'm missing something. So I'll go back to it. Same thing with movies, you know, certain things will hit you the first time. Like for instance, I always go back to this example, but like Schindler's List. If you didn't get that the first time, you got other shit to worry about, because that's a straightforward, and that, to me, I got everything out of it. I'm never gonna watch that movie again. Like, quite honestly, like I have no interest in watching that movie again because I got all of it. I got all of it, and it's something that is, it's the way it's told is very in your face, and I almost feel like you don't need to think about it a lot, but I think that's the point.
Right.
The point is that it's presenting essentially, these are essentially just the facts. This is what happened, motherfuckers. Like, this is the shit, the horrible shit that happened. Like, you know, I watched a documentary on Tulsa, and it's, regardless of anything else, just the facts are ridiculous. Right. And if you like watch something like that or read about Tulsa and you don't get what happened there, you have bigger shit to worry about. Your worldview is fucked. Like, so that's why I think when I read something that I know has intent and I'm not getting it, I need to take a second look at it.
Gotcha. No, and I agree with you on all those points, and I'm happy to hear that, you know, that you feel with the Horseman that there is more to be discovered, because there is. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Actually, part of the Horseman, I think part of the appeal of the Horseman is that people have gone on my journey of really fleshing out the world and fleshing out the universe. Basically what happened was that I did not wait for all of the rules of my universe to be set in stone before I put out the first issue. I had the general idea. I had the general rules, right? The basics of it. But I also wanted to give my space, or I wanted to give the opportunity for my world to grow. And actually, it's with the interaction of some people helped me grow that world. When I began, you know, it was a little rigid. You know, it was like, okay, it was just going to be those 7, and the day it is, and that's it. But what I realized is that I actually wrote into the first miniseries. I wrote the seed to expand the world, especially with issue 2, with the moment in issue 2, right?
Right.
That moment when I came back to working on the Horseman again, and my mind changed. I'm like, well, how do I bring all this stuff in there? Oh, I already wrote that shit up in there. You know what I mean? And so that allowed me to expand on what is now the Horseman universe. Like, when I got done doing Mythos, that book, the official handbook, like, I looked at all that stuff. I'm like, oh shit, fucked around and created a whole superhero universe. Like, no, I'm like, this is what it's like, you know. This is how those things happen. It doesn't happen right away. It doesn't happen all at once, right? For then, you know, you to go on and just plug these things in the world, right? It happens in real time. Like, the Marvel universe built itself out in real time, right?
Yeah, if you went back and told Stan Lee that there was going to be a young Arab Muslim woman that was going to be Ms. Marvel, he fucking had a heart attack. Like,
when it came to 63, even the whole notion of Ms. Marvel is like, well, what are you talking about?
Right.
Ms. Marvel. I mean, you know, it's a Spider-Man. But, you know, that universe grew organically. You know, DC is different because DC is a company whose multiverse grew from acquisition.
That's true. Yeah.
This is what I mean.
They bought a bunch of shit.
Like, DC's multiverse exists because they bought a lot of comic book characters.
That's very true. Some of their most interesting characters came out of that.
Yeah, I mean, Fawcett Comics, you've got Shazam, right? Charlton Comics, you've got Captain Atom, you got The
Question.
Question, you've got Blue Beetle, you know, which have been transmogrified and remixed by Alan Moore to become, you know, characters in Watchmen.
They were. It was originally supposed to just be a Charlton book.
But then, you know, DC was like, "Yo, we want to make more money off these characters than just this one, um, you know, this one miniseries." Right? So you know, so when it comes to the Horseman universe, the new mythology, as I call it, you know, um, at this point with these, you know, 5 big books in there, yeah, at this point you've got the universe, and you've got the rules and the characters, and also the deeper meaning of it. You know, so when you read through it again, as you go through it again, you know what I mean. I think, yeah, I hope that you will still have questions, but I also hope that, you know, the major questions, or like the deeper underlying thing of how it all gets started, I hope that's made clear to you. And at which point, you know, when you get that, you're like, word, I want more, right? Because there's more Horseman stuff coming. I'm just busy with other projects right now,
That's
which actually allows me to take a mental break. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, it's if you do any one thing for a long time, you get into a rut. So
Right,
having that break makes sense. Are you
right.
working on anything that is public knowledge, or is it going to be stuff that people are going to be able to pick up?
Well, it's a couple of things. Number one, I'm in the midst of finishing up actually an illustrated novel
Okay.
called The Court, for another company called Rogue Media. And it's funny, I'm actually the writer and the artist and designing that whole book too. So we'll be starting a Kickstarter for that come September.
That's cool. All
You
right.
know, right now I'm literally at the stage where I'm just drawing the illustrations in there. Um, at the same time, it's another thing that's interesting about this whole pandemic slash social upheaval right now is that all of a sudden people want to talk with me and people want to work with me. So, you know, there are a couple of other things I'm doing. I'm going to be part of this anthology called Modern Mythology. Uh,
Okay.
that's going to start, I believe, in around December. Um in addition to that, you know, I'm just doing various speaking engagements, kind of like this one right here. You know, freelancing, doing design work, you know, logo design work, character design work. You know, we just actually did basically a Griot Enterprises commercial for the Detroit Electronic Music Conference that's sponsored by Charivari, which is happening right now online for free
No, that's cool.
until August 15th. You know, fantastic lineup of Detroit DJs, Detroit techno. You know, that's my other heart, which is music. Uh,
I gotta send that information to a couple of my friends. They're really into DJs themselves, and
yeah. So real shit. So, you know, I'm just busy, you know, busy still doing the work, also still teaching, you know, because that's part of my career as well.
how is that working out for you? As far as, I mean, like, obviously, remote teaching is a very different situation. How is that? You know, have there been any kind of crazy challenges, or has it been a more, because you're a technological person to begin with. I mean, I think so. I think maybe
Mm.
was it a little easier for you than it might have been for someone else.
Yeah, the transition hasn't been that hard, you know. I do prefer, of course, you know, I do prefer being in the class with my students, to create more of that connection and more of that bond,
For sure.
which I feel, you know, leads to a better learning experience. But definitely with the technology right now, with the Zoom, that sort of, it helps a lot. And I will say this, um, working from home works for me, and it definitely works for people that have multiple things going on.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, at once, right? So it's
I feel
like,
you.
and
You know, I jump down on my breaks. You know, when I'm doing my day job, I jump down on my breaks and I'll knock out a quick edit or put a few cuts in a video. Like, just run back upstairs when break's done. Like, yeah, it's convenient.
it's very convenient. Yeah, especially, you know, if you believe in the philosophy of Wu-Tang Financial and diversify your bonds, meaning having multiple streams of income, you know, it definitely helps to be in one area, right? So yeah. So in terms of the pandemic, you know, as you said in the beginning of our conversation, same thing with my life. You know, the pandemic really hasn't changed like my life, or you know,
Right.
or my hustle. If anything, um, it it's kind of like, I don't know, increase my workload or
Right.
something, something like that. I'm just busy.
I
You
feel
know what I
you.
mean?
I feel you. I feel you.
Time to be
I
bored.
uh I, I've been really this past year really I've been trying to figure out kind of it took me a long time to kind of get on the page that I needed to be as far as like what I wanted out of life. You know, it's been like, oh, I want to make videos. And before, it was computers and tech, and like our main YouTube channel used to be a tech channel. Like we used to review tech, but like that shit costs money. So like you run out of money, you run out of shit to review. so so and it really kind of got monotonous. It got boring for me.
Like, man, that's when you gotta go to the people and be like, I got this show, and if you just look me your shit, I can talk about your shit, and I'll give it back to you. You know,
I like that's a good point too. But you know
right?
what? And it's I've had a couple. I've met some people. A friend of mine, I met him through that. Like we were doing tech reviews, and he was like, "Hey, I make these." He's a local company, and he's got, they're like mounting systems and all this stuff. Like it's super cool dude, and like his shit is top notch, like quality shit. So like I've had those kind of relationships, and it's very cool. It's been a very interesting ride. But like this last year, I was just trying to figure out like what I wanted, and I kind of settled on storytelling. Like I want to tell stories. I just like it's like it's like my zen place. Like when I'm telling a story, I'm in it the whole way. Like I'm animated, I'm everywhere. So like I love doing it, but I I was trying to figure out like what is it? Am I going to write books? Am I going to make comics? Am I going to make movies? And I didn't want to settle. And it was one of those things like I want to do this short film. Like I have an idea for a short film, and this is going to be something that I'm going to do as a short film. But then I also have these ideas for comics, and I also have these ideas for novels. Like I want to do it all, and I don't, and it kind of came to me that I don't have to settle on one, and I don't have to like try to build it out as, like you're doing a novel, you're doing comics, you're doing a whole different kind of like a whole lot of different stuff. And it like never dawned on me before, like recently, that I could just do it all. Like I could just, I'm gonna work on a comic book this week, I'm gonna work on a novel next week, I'm gonna make a few videos in between. Like I can do all of that, and it still get all of these things out. And actually weirdly, because I hate my job, like I do tech support from home. Like it's you deal with people who don't understand simple concepts all day. Like it's frustrating. And I mean, like I literally, to the point where like I was my anger problems and all sorts of shit. Like I ended up going to see a therapist, and it once I came to that realization, and I was like, I can just like grab a notebook and write a little thing. It was very much like freeing. Like I don't have to wait for this big thing to happen for me to be doing the thing that I want to do. And on top of like storytelling, I'm kind of like I'm a hype man. Like I love telling people about other people that I know, the people that do cool shit. Like I've told people about Horseman a bunch of times. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just like my shit. Like if I feel somebody might resonate with somebody, I'll be like, yo, you need to check this out. This is going to be dope for you. So like I've been wanting to promote indie for a long time. In fact, like I came up with an idea probably about 10, 15 years ago that essentially was, I don't know if you know, like, I'm sure you know, Steam, the gaming platform. It was going to be Steam for indie, but like just indie, and it was going to be for comics. It was going to be for not like everything, and you know, that's a monumental task, and you know, I think in big. So recently, I sat down and I was like, how can I do this now without having to have $1 million and 45 coders? And I came up with the idea of kind of a blend between Wizard, like what Wizard used to be, not Wizard, not Wizard in his dying days, but what Wizard used to be, and what heavy metal is. Heavy metal does presentations. You know, it's just like a ongoing anthology magazine. Like I think the only thing they have in there is content. Like I don't think there's any articles or anything like that.
They have some articles in there, but it's heavy metal. Heavy metal is kind of like the Playboy of comics, you know, in a sense. But no, they definitely have the articles. They definitely have the comics. They definitely have like the galleries and whatnot. Actually, the Playboy model was the model that I used for the 4 pages, 16 bars anthology series as well. You know, but just again doing that for creators of color. But I'm loving everything that you're saying because I get it, and that's actually the point, right? So many people, they get caught up in the delivery system.
Yep.
Of what they do, as opposed to what they really want to do, right? Like, you know, at the end of the day, Brio Enterprises is its name and its mission statement. You know, Brio Enterprises, we tell good stories. We tell great stories. We're storytellers, right? There are many different ways you could tell a story. When I do, for example, if I write an article for my blog, right, I'm telling a story.
Right.
If I'm doing a mix for the latest episode of my podcast, Ghetto of the Mind, where that's all music, you know, I'm DJing a narrative, right? Like I say that Ghetto of the Mind is, you know, each episode is like a soundtrack for a movie that doesn't exist, you know?
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if I'm doing my comic book stuff, I'm doing my comic book stuff. But at the same time, you know, I could flip it and, you know, I write for role-playing games and stuff like that. I've written for that, you know. If I get a chance to do a music video or the rare times that I have, you know, that's telling stories. Even when I'm designing for other clients, you know, like graphic design is all about visual communication, which is all about telling the story, right?
Right.
So, you know, at the end of the day, what you said, you know, at the core, that's your intent, is to be a storyteller, right? So no matter what mechanism you're using, you're telling stories. So it's like hearing you say that, it's like, yeah, that's actually the philosophy that I really understood and came upon during this pandemic, right? Like a lot of people, you gotta understand that most people's identities are tied up in what they do, not who they are.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
And so with these people that are not working right now or having to stay home, you know, they never had that opportunity to figure out who the fuck they were outside of their gig. I was lucky enough to realize that I wanted my gig. I was lucky enough to realize that at an early age that who I am at my heart and at my core could become my gig. And so at this stage of the game, again, I'm not rolling in dough, right? But ultimately, if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's like money don't mean shit.
That is a beautiful thing. It's very true. It's 100% true. Money's not fucking dick shit. Because guess what happened? People would the most money in the world when there was no toilet paper to buy, when there was no fucking cleaning shit to buy, you couldn't buy it. You could have all the money, you can't buy it. It ain't there. So it doesn't matter. Money doesn't mean shit. You're right. It takes me to kind of go back to our original subject that we were talking about is kind of the social structure of America. What you just said is a perfect phrasing for an idea that I kind of happened upon. There is the analogy of the race, right? If we all line up, if everybody lines up to run a race, but then you step forward for everything that you have and everything you don't have to deal with. I never had to, I've been stopped by a cop on the street and he had a conversation with me and I went on about my day. And that would have been a completely different universe if I would have been a black man. And I know that and I'm aware of that, but a lot of people aren't. But it's like you do that, you step ahead if you've never had to worry about randomly being stopped by a police officer. You step ahead for all of these things. And then you say, all right, now everybody run this same race. And obviously people are in different positions. I realize that the fallacy of the quote unquote American dream is that we're all running the same fucking race. Everybody's trying to be a millionaire. Everybody's going for that cash. But we could all be running different races, or even if you call it, if it's the same race of life. We don't all need that million. We don't all need that million. It's a fun thing to dream about, but like I'm doing all right. I make about 50. I'm doing all right. I'm comfortable. Like if I never made another dollar more, I'd still be comfortable. But
actually, that was the original American dream, right? In the American dream, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Pursuit of happiness, not pursuit of fucking money.
Exactly, not the pursuit of dollars, right? And that's exactly it. I mean, again, we need the resources to survive, and we like to be comfortable, right? But what as we're talking back and forth, what I realize is like in terms of career, in terms of what I want to do, it's like I'm doing it. I've been doing it for a long time, ups and downs,
of course.
Side, like this is what I want to do. I would not be happy doing anything else. And to have that ability and to realize that and to manifest that, for me, I realized like that's true wealth, right? Like for me, that's true wealth. Also, what's true wealth are the people that I have around me. You know what I mean? Like my squad. That's where I feel like I'm the richest man in the world. You know what I mean? And when I talk about my squad, it's like I talk about my family. I talk about my friend family. I talk about like my friends. You know what I'm saying? Like the colleagues who honestly rock with me, right? Like that's where I realized, that's where my true wealth lies, right? And no one can take that away from me, and it is extremely empowering to have this, this publishing entity that literally it's through the sheer force of will that Griot Enterprises still exists today. Because if, I were basing my success on how much money I made from the company and my books, I would have given up a long time ago.
I feel you.
But if I did give up a long time ago, then I would not be in the position that I'm in right now, like talking to you, on a podcast, or having my books be in a TV show coming on Amazon Prime in the fall and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
I like that. That's nice little flex there. I like that. I like that. What show is that? No. What show is that? I'll be honest. I have Amazon Prime, but I watch so few shows on there.
Yeah. It's going to be on. The show's called Utopia, which is going to be on Amazon Prime in the fall, and it's a U.S. remake of a British show.
As many are.
It's actually a show about comic books, and
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, the Horseman books are going to be a part of it. There's going to be a scene at a convention where you're actually going to see a Horseman booth.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And on the show and stuff like that. But but those are the things that happen because I put the shit out there.
Right.
And because people feel the intention of the work that I do. So I I appreciate where I am right now. And it just it just tells me, keep it moving. You know what I mean? Keep pushing forward.
I think a lot of people confuse that feeling with that, like appreciating where you are, appreciating what you have. I think a lot of people have confused that with settling. Like you don't like that is you've accepted that this is the end or this is what you're gonna have, and but like your last sentence there, it's the impetus to keep moving. This is the thing that keep doing the thing because you're here now. Where could you be if you keep doing it?
Right. Exactly.
that's a beautiful way to end a conversation. We've been at this for about 4 hours, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate your time more than I can verbalize. I've really, honestly, I missed you. I haven't seen you in ages. Like last time we saw each other was at a convention. We chatted up for a minute, but we all had other stuff, stuff going on. So like, I appreciate your time and just having a chance to chit chat with you here.
Oh, definitely. Was this live?
This was not live. Honestly, this was not a live show. I didn't want to put it live because I just wanted to hang out with you, and I didn't want to have to deal with anybody commenting. We last couple we did we're live, and we did have a really lively conversation with the comments, so that was super fun. But honestly I just wanted to hang out with you for a while and just have a good conversation. So,
word up. Well, cool, man. Thank you. Yo, let me know when this. It's going
to be going up Sunday. It'll be on. It goes up on YouTube. It goes up on our website, and then it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all that stuff.
Cool. Just send me the links, and I'll promote that joint. All right.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time, man. Thank you for hanging out. Like all the creative stuff you do. Real quick, I just want to ask. You said the JBD was going to be re-released this month. Is that the Devil's Due? Is that the current version that's on Amazon, or is there a different version coming out?
I actually updated. I've updated all the stuff. So if you go to Amazon, you get it from Amazon. You get the print book right now from Amazon. I'm just waiting for the print copy of the trade. My proof copy from Drive-Thru Comics, so you can get it from there.
I'll be I'm a little salty. I just bought a physical book from Drive-Thru, and it was like it had like the cuts weren't straight. Like it had white still on the cuts. It was supposed to be black. It was weird.
Yeah, with them, I make sure like with Drive-Thru, I'm glad that they have the printing option now, and definitely with Drive-Thru, what's nice is. The owner, one of the heads of Drive-Thru, has been like a big fan and a big advocate for Griot. So we've had conversations. So even when I get my proofs back, I'm like, yo, I need my proof to look like somebody who's actually buying the book. So I need to make sure that shit was on point.
Right.
Like, I need to make sure, like the shit is cut right, that you're using the right paper.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'm glad that I know these things to tell these things to this
right,
dude.
100%.
Yeah, so they've been stepping up the plate, right? If you want to, like I said, you want to get a good print copy, yeah, definitely go to Amazon. Like either tonight or tomorrow, I'm gonna have my buttons readjusted, so that people can go and order the book in those different spaces. But if you go on griotenterprises.com right now, like one of the things that I'm doing, because my birthday's on the 17th, I'm just saying, like, people who, want to show love to this Mino line for his birthday, just buy some shit. So,
Hell yeah.
when you go on grioenterprises.com right away, and I'm like, it doesn't matter what you buy. You can buy a book, you can buy a poster or a T-shirt or a button. Like, I got all that shit. Like, just go to the website. You know what I mean? Go to the website, like, click on whatever section, get whatever you want to get. I've got the bundles, right up in the front page. So, people can get, like, mad books for, like, decent prices and whatnot. So that's what I have. That's what I have happening and whatnot.
Awesome. I love it. I just realized you have art books, and I fucking collect art books. I love art books. I'm a process junkie. Like, I love that whole shit.
I'm a process hoard too. And so funny, those art books are old as hell. Like that book Manifesto.
That's been a while. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, like that was me being so cocky in my career. Like, I'm old enough to like write a whole book about my experience, and I think it was like up to 2010 at tops. I think like in the business maybe 10 years. But I look at those books and I'm like, I look at my blog and I'm like, maybe it's time for me to like do a real, like now that I really know some shit. it's time for me to like really flex on that. But hey, if people still feel the manifesto, you know what I mean, that's cool. People still want that chronicle, that's cool. But I'm definitely gonna retool those in the near future. I just need to get done with this other shit first.
Go hardcover, man. Go hardcover. Fucking get in touch with what the fuck's his face? I always forget his Bart Sears. Their whole company, they've been putting out like these crazy good artist books. Like they just had a buy one get one over the like a couple weekends ago, and I was like, well, shit, all right, fine. Like buy one get one. It's hard for me to walk away, so I have all 5 now, and they're just dope. They're dope.
Right.
Like they're he did Daryl Banks, which like I didn't realize like how much he was a part of like a bunch of different stuff, and like I just really interesting, cool to see like the background of the like where the art is and where it came from and what like the original, like this is the first project I was on kind of stuff. I was like, I love that shit.
Got you. All right, I'm gonna take a look at them. All right.
Hell yeah,
do
man.
That.
Because you know what, I'll buy it day one. I'll be right there. I'll be on that Kickstarter. Because they do, because you know what they do like master editions of stuff. So like you could do like a crazy horseman like collection and an art book. I'd ride for that shit. I'd ride for it. Let's do it. I'd promote it everywhere.
Word up. All right, man. Well, listen, let me let you go. So I'm gonna try and start this late afternoon, evening shit. but definitely, man, it's a great convo. And please let me know when this is ready to go live. All right.
Absolutely, will do. Thanks again, man.
Welcome. Thank you. All right.
All right, buddy. I'll see you.
Peace.